Hey there, and welcome to Crime for Sleep. I know you're having trouble falling asleep, so let me keep you company with true crime stories from around the world. Before we dive in, I'm curious, where did you first hear this one? If you enjoy these stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Now get comfortable, and let's get into tonight's case. Crime 1, I wasn't supposed to be in that attic. The realtor said it was sealed off dangerous, but I was curious, especially after hearing the floor creak when no one was up there. The diary was under a rotted beam, pages brittle but legible. Most of it was rambling descriptions of strangers' routines, odd details about people's habits, but the last few pages were about me. My clothes, my home, my thoughts. It described things I'd never told anyone. The final entry. A step-by-step breakdown of how I would die, and the worst part, some of it was already happening. The handwriting was careful, deliberate, each letter formed with the precision of someone who had all the time in the world. The first entries were mundane observations about the neighborhood, the woman who walked her dog at dawn, the man who checked his mailbox twice daily, the family that never closed their curtains. But as I read deeper, the entries became more focused, more personal, more invasive. The author knew that I drank coffee from the same blue mug every morning. They knew I kept spare keys under the fake rock by the back door. They knew I talked to myself when I thought no one was listening. They knew about the small scar on my left shoulder from childhood, the one I cover with sleeves even in summer. How could they know these things? I found myself checking the locks on my doors more often. The sensation of being watched had become constant, like a weight pressing against my skull. Every shadow seemed to shift when I wasn't looking directly at it. Every sound from outside made my pulse quicken. The diary had awakened something in me, a paranoia that felt both irrational and completely justified. The entries about my routine were unnervingly accurate. The author knew I always parked in the same spot, always took the same route to work, always stopped at the same coffee shop. They described the way I fumbled with my keys when nervous, how I bit my lower lip when concentrating. They knew about the small crack in my bedroom window that whistled when the wind blew from the east. But it was the later entries that made my hands shake as I read them. The author wrote about conversations I'd had with friends, word for word. They described arguments I'd had with my family, private moments I'd shared with no one. They knew about the recurring dream I'd been having, the one where I'm running through empty hallways that seem to stretch forever. They knew about the medication I took for anxiety, the exact dosage and frequency. The final entries were different. The tone shifted from observational to predictive. The author wrote about future events as if they were memories. They described a phone call I would receive, a conversation that would change everything. They wrote about a meeting I would have with someone from my past, someone I thought I'd never see again. They described the exact words we would exchange, the look in their eyes, the way my voice would crack when I tried to speak. And then came the entry about my death, clinical, detailed, matter of fact. The author described the location, the circumstances, the exact sequence of events. They wrote about the clothes I would be wearing, the expression on my face, the way my body would be positioned. They described the weather that day, the sounds in the background, the smell of rain on concrete. They wrote about who would find me and how long it would take. The phone call came 3 days after I found the diary. The voice was familiar but distant, someone I hadn't spoken to in years. They wanted to meet, to talk about something important. The words they used were almost identical to those written in the diary. My mouth went dry as I agreed to meet them at the location the author had described. The meeting place was a small park I'd visited as a child. The trees were bare, their branches reaching toward a gray sky like skeletal fingers. The person who waited for me on the bench looked older, worn down by years of carrying something heavy. Their eyes held secrets I wasn't sure I wanted to know. Our conversation unfolded exactly as the diary had predicted. Every word, every pause, every gesture matched the written account. They spoke about events from our shared past, about things that had happened that I'd tried to forget. They knew about the diary I'd found, knew about the fear that had been growing inside me like a tumor. They smiled when I mentioned it, a sad, knowing expression that chilled me to the bone. As we talked, I began to understand. The diary wasn't just a record of observations, it was a confession. A detailed account of someone's obsession, their careful study of my life, their methodical planning of my end. The author had been preparing for this moment, orchestrating every detail, manipulating circumstances to ensure their predictions would come true. But the revelation that shattered everything was simpler and more terrifying than I'd imagined. The handwriting in the diary wasn't that of a stranger. As I sat in that park, listening to words I'd already read, watching gestures I'd already seen described, I realized the truth. The careful script, the intimate knowledge, the perfect predictions, they all pointed to an impossible conclusion. The diary was written in my own hand. The observations were my own. The predictions were my own plans, recorded in moments I couldn't remember, during hours that seemed to disappear from my memory like smoke. The medication I took for anxiety had side effects I'd never been told about. The gaps in my memory weren't just stress-related. They were windows into a part of myself I'd never known existed. The person sitting across from me in the park wasn't a stranger at all. They were someone I'd hurt, someone I'd destroyed without remembering. The diary was my confession, my careful documentation of my own crimes, my methodical planning of my own justice. The fear I'd been feeling wasn't paranoia. It was guilt, seeping up from the depths of my fractured mind. As the sun set behind the bare trees, I understood that the diary's final prediction wasn't about murder. It was about justice. It was about a reckoning that had been building for years, hidden beneath layers of forgotten memories and chemical suppressions. The death described in those final pages wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. A chance to finally face what I'd done, to accept responsibility for actions I'd buried so deep I'd convinced myself they belonged to someone else. The diary sits on my kitchen table now, open to the final entry. The words stare back at me, patient and inevitable. Some predictions are just promises waiting to be kept. Some confessions are just admissions waiting to be made. Some endings are just beginnings wearing disguises. I can hear footsteps in the attic again, but this time I know who's making them. Crime 2, I hike the same trail almost every week. It's my escape. But lately someone's been leaving things out there, things that belong to me. First it was a single sock, then my old college ID, then my favorite mug shattered near a fallen log. I thought I was losing my mind until I found my childhood blanket, perfectly folded and tied with string. I never took it from my parents' house. I started wondering, how much of my life has this person been watching? And how are they always one step ahead? The morning air carries the scent of damp earth and rotting leaves as I make my way down the familiar path. My boots crunch against the gravel, each step echoing in the silence. The forest feels different now, heavy with secrets I'm not sure I want to uncover. Every shadow seems to hide something. Every rustle of branches makes my heart race. I've been documenting everything. Photos, notes, trying to piece together a timeline that makes sense. The sock appeared 3 weeks ago, navy blue with a small hole near the heel. I remembered losing it, but not where. The college ID came next, weathered and bent at the corners. My face stared back at me from the plastic, younger, more naive. I'd canceled that card years ago when I moved apartments. The mug was different. It wasn't just left behind, it was destroyed. Ceramic shards scattered like confetti around the base of an old oak tree. I knelt there for what felt like hours, collecting pieces, trying to understand the message. Was it anger, a threat, or something else entirely? But the blanket changed everything. That soft, worn fabric with tiny elephants printed across it had been tucked away in my mother's closet for decades. I called her that night, my voice shaking as I tried to explain without sounding insane. She was quiet for a long moment before admitting she'd been meaning to tell me something. A man had stopped by the house a few weeks ago, claiming to be from a charity that collected childhood items for donation. He was polite, well-dressed, and knew things about our family that made her trust him. My hands trembled as I held the phone. He described me perfectly, my old room, my favorite books, even the way I used to arrange my stuffed animals. My mother gave him a box of my old things, including the blanket. She thought she was helping someone less fortunate. I started carrying a small camera with me on every hike. The forest path winds through dense trees for almost 2 miles before opening into a clearing where families sometimes picnic. I've walked this route hundreds of times, but now I notice things I'd missed before. Broken twigs that seem deliberately placed. Footprints that don't match the hiking boots of regular visitors. Small disturbances in the undergrowth that suggest someone's been watching, waiting. The next item appeared near the halfway point, wedged between 2 rocks like an offering. A tube of lipstick I'd lost months ago. The cap was missing and the tip was worn down to a nub. But it was mine, the exact shade I'd worn to job interviews, the one that made me feel confident and capable. I unscrewed the base and found something inside that made my blood freeze. A small slip of paper with my daily schedule written in careful handwriting. Coffee shop visits, gym sessions, grocery store trips. Everything. I stopped going to those places, changed my routine entirely, but the items kept appearing. A keychain from my first apartment, a bracelet I'd given to my sister for her birthday, though she swore she still had it. A prescription bottle with my name on it, though I'd never taken that medication. Each discovery felt like a violation, a reminder that someone had been collecting pieces of my life without my knowledge. The police officer who took my statement was kind but skeptical. These weren't technically crimes, he explained. The items belonged to me and I was finding them on public land. Without evidence of stalking or direct threats, there wasn't much they could do. He suggested I stop hiking alone, maybe find a new trail, but I couldn't let go. Something about this felt purposeful, like a puzzle I was meant to solve. I started researching missing persons cases in the area. 3 women had disappeared over the past 5 years, all of them regular hikers. The investigations went cold quickly, no witnesses, no evidence, no clear connections between the victims. But as I read through the newspaper articles, something nagged at me. Each woman had reported strange incidents before disappearing. Items moved in their homes, feeling watched, small violations that seemed insignificant until they weren't. The breakthrough came when I found my old diary, the one I'd kept as a teenager. It was placed carefully on a fallen log, wrapped in plastic to protect it from the elements. I opened it with shaking hands, expecting to find my adolescent thoughts and dreams. Instead, I found new entries written in my own handwriting, but describing events I'd never experienced, conversations I'd never had, feelings I'd never felt. Someone had been practicing my handwriting, studying my voice, my mannerisms, my deepest thoughts. The entries were intimate, personal, written by someone who knew me better than I knew myself. They described a relationship that never existed, plans I'd never made, fears I'd never voiced, but the handwriting was perfect, indistinguishable from my own. I called the detective handling the missing persons cases. Her name was Rodriguez, and she'd been working these disappearances for 3 years. When I described the diary, she was quiet for a long time. Then she asked me to meet her at the station. She had something to show me. The evidence room was cold and sterile, filled with boxes of forgotten crimes. Rodriguez pulled out a file marked with one of the missing women's names. Inside were photographs of items found in the woods, a bracelet, a scarf, a small notebook, but these weren't the victim's belongings. They were decoys, carefully crafted replicas meant to throw off the investigation. She showed me another file, then another. Each missing woman had reported finding their personal items in strange places before disappearing. Each had been dismissed as paranoid or attention-seeking. Each had been replaced by someone who knew them intimately. The pattern was clear now. Someone was studying these women, learning their lives, their habits, their secrets. The items weren't random. They were training tools, practice runs for something bigger. Someone was preparing to become us. I look at my reflection in the bathroom mirror and wonder how long I have left. How long before the items stop appearing and I simply disappear? How long before someone else starts living my life, wearing my face, speaking in my voice? The forest still calls to me, but I don't go alone anymore. I've started carrying mace, a whistle, a GPS tracker. I've changed my locks, my phone number, my entire routine. But I know it won't matter. Whoever is doing this has been watching for months, maybe years. They know me better than I know myself. The last item I found was a photograph of me sleeping in my own bed, taken from inside my room. I was wearing the same pajamas I'd put on that night, clutching the same pillow I'd held for comfort. Someone had been in my house, in my most private space, documenting my vulnerability. I haven't slept since. Sometimes I wonder if I'm already gone, if the woman typing these words is just another replica, another carefully crafted copy meant to fool the people who love me. Maybe the real me is buried somewhere in those woods, and this is just the beginning of someone else's perfect life. The trail still winds through the forest, peaceful and inviting. Other hikers pass by, lost in their own thoughts, unaware that someone might be watching them too. I want to warn them, but how do you explain that someone is collecting pieces of your life? How do you make people understand that their most precious belongings might already be gone? I keep walking, keep searching, keep hoping that somewhere in those trees I'll find the answer. But deep down, I know the truth. The person leaving these items isn't trying to scare me. They're trying to become me. And judging by how well they know my handwriting, my habits, my deepest fears, they're almost ready. The question isn't whether they'll succeed. The question is whether anyone will notice when they do. Crime 3, I always thought the floor in my basement felt off, like it was hollow underneath. I decided to lift a few tiles. What I found was a slab of concrete that looked different from the rest, newer, smoother. I borrowed tools, started breaking through. Beneath it, wrapped in a sheet of plastic, was something long and heavy. I couldn't open it, not right away. But when I did, the stench nearly knocked me out. Bones, jewelry, a lock of hair tied with string. I don't know who buried it. But that night, the walls started making sounds, like something was trying to get out. That was 3 months ago. I should have called the police immediately. I should have done a lot of things differently. But when you find something like that in your own home, something that changes everything you thought you knew about the place where you sleep, eat, and live, rationality becomes a luxury you can't afford. The house had been in my family for decades. My grandmother lived here before she passed, and before that, my great uncle. The basement always had that musty smell, the kind that seeps into your clothes and follows you upstairs. But after I found what was buried beneath those tiles, I realized the smell wasn't just dampness and age. It was something else entirely. I started going through my grandmother's things, boxes I'd never bothered to open. Old letters, photographs, documents yellowed with age. Most of it seemed ordinary bills, recipes, correspondence with neighbors. But then I found something that made my hands shake. A letter from a local contractor, dated decades ago, thanking her for the payment on basement renovations. The concrete work, he wrote, was completed to her specifications. He mentioned how unusual it was to pour concrete in such a specific pattern, but he'd done exactly as she'd requested. I read that letter over and over, trying to convince myself it meant nothing. Renovations happen, people fix their basements, but the dates troubled me. The work was done just weeks after my gray tuncle disappeared. Everyone always said he'd left suddenly, gone to live with relatives in another state. No one questioned it. No one looked for him. I started making calls, old neighbors, distant relatives, anyone who might remember those days. Most of the conversations felt normal at first, people sharing memories, talking about how the neighborhood used to be. But there were gaps in their stories, places where the narrative seemed to skip over certain details. When I asked about my gray tuncle specifically, voices would change. People would grow quiet, offer vague responses about how he'd been troubled or difficult to live with. One elderly neighbor, someone who'd lived across the street for over 40 years, invited me over for coffee. She had that careful way of speaking that comes with age, measuring each word before letting it go. She told me about the night she'd heard shouting from our house, how she'd seen lights on in the basement window well into the early morning hours. She'd considered calling someone, she said, but my grandmother had always been so private, so particular about her business. Your grandmother was a strong woman, she told me, stirring her coffee slowly. She did what she had to do. Some people, they push too hard, take too much. Sometimes they need to be stopped. I left her house feeling like I'd been punched in the chest. The way she'd said it, the certainty in her voice, made it clear she knew more than she was saying. But when I tried to call her the next day, her phone went straight to voicemail. The day after that, I drove by her house and saw a moving truck in the driveway. I went back to the basement with new eyes. I examined every inch of the concrete, looking for other irregularities. The floor wasn't just repaired, it was deliberate. Whoever had done this work had taken time, planned it carefully. In the corner, barely visible unless you knew to look for it, I found what looked like scratch marks in the concrete, deep gouges as if something had been dragged across the surface. The jewelry I'd found was antique, the kind of pieces that held value both monetary and sentimental. A ring with initials engraved inside, initials that matched my great uncle's name, a watch that had stopped working decades ago. Each item felt heavy in my hands, weighted with implications I wasn't ready to accept. I started researching missing persons reports from that era, spending hours online looking through archived newspaper articles and police records. There were several people who'd gone missing around the same time, but the reports were sparse, investigations minimal. It was a different time when people disappeared more easily, when questions weren't always asked. But I found something else, a hospital record buried in a collection of my grandmother's papers I'd missed before. She'd been treated for injuries consistent with defensive wounds, scratches on her arms and face, bruising on her hands. The date was just days after my great uncle's supposed departure. The attending physician had noted her reluctance to explain how she'd sustained the injuries. I called the hospital knowing it was probably useless after so many years. But the records clerk, an older woman who'd worked there for most of her career, remembered my grandmother. She'd stood out, the clerk said, because she'd been so composed despite her injuries. Most people who came in looking like that were either terrified or angry. My grandmother had been neither. She'd been calm, almost relieved. The walls in my basement had always made sounds. Old houses settle, pipes expand and contract, wood shifts with humidity. But since I'd found what was buried beneath the floor, the sounds had changed. They came mostly at night, a rhythmic tapping that seemed to move along the walls. I told myself it was my imagination, that stress and lack of sleep were making me hear things that weren't there. But then I started finding things. Small objects moved from where I'd left them. A photograph of my gray tuncle, one I'd placed on a shelf, appeared on the basement floor. A key I'd never seen before showed up in my jacket pocket. Each incident was small enough to dismiss individually, but together they formed a pattern I couldn't ignore. I decided to dig deeper, literally. I rented more equipment, started breaking through more of the concrete. What I found made everything worse. Evidence of hasty construction, areas where the concrete had been poured around objects that shouldn't have been there. Personal items that had been buried with the body, a wallet, identification papers, things that confirmed what I already knew but didn't want to believe. My grandmother had been protecting herself. The injuries, the defensive wounds, the hospital visit, they all pointed to a confrontation that had escalated beyond what anyone could have predicted. But she'd made a choice that night, a choice that had kept her safe, but had also buried the truth beneath layers of concrete and decades of silence. I understand now why she never spoke about it, why the neighbors developed selective memories, why the official story was never questioned. Some secrets are too heavy to carry, too dangerous to share. Some truths change everything, not just for the person who discovers them, but for everyone who has to live with the consequences. The basement is quiet now. I've stopped hearing the sounds, stopped finding objects moved from their places. But I know what lies beneath my floor, and I know what my grandmother was capable of when she was pushed too far. The question that keeps me awake isn't whether she was right or wrong, it's whether I'm strong enough to carry this secret the way she did, and whether the truth is worth the destruction it would bring to everyone who's built their lives on the foundation of her silence. The concrete is hard to break through, but it's not impossible. The question is whether some things are better left buried, and whether the justice we seek is worth the price of digging it up. Crime 4, it was supposed to be a simple trip. The car looked fine, clean, full tank, no scratches, but I dropped my phone between the seats, and when I reached down, I felt something sticky. I pulled my hand back, blood, dried but unmistakable. I checked under the seat. There was fabric, shredded, zip ties, a single earring. I returned the car without saying a word. The rental guy gave me a strange look, like he knew. That night, I got a text from an unknown number. It said you weren't supposed to look. The earring haunted me, silver, small, with a butterfly charm. I kept thinking about it during my business meetings, during dinner, during sleepless nights. I couldn't shake the image of someone struggling in that backseat, their jewelry scattered as they fought for their life. The blood wasn't just a stain, it was evidence of something terrible. I decided to go back to the rental office. Different person behind the counter this time, a woman with tired eyes and nicotine-stained fingers. I asked about the car I'd returned, casual-like. She typed something into her computer, frowned, then looked at me with sudden interest. That vehicle is flagged, she said quietly. We're not supposed to discuss it. Flagged for what? She glanced around the empty office, then leaned forward. Someone reported it stolen 2 weeks ago, but it was never stolen. The person who reported it missing was found dead in their apartment the next morning. Natural causes, they said, heart attack. My skin prickled. Who rented it before me? I can't tell you that, but I can tell you this, they never returned it. We had to pick it up from a parking garage downtown. No explanation, no contact, just sitting there with the keys on the dashboard. The woman's hands shook slightly as she spoke. I noticed she kept glancing at the security camera in the corner, as if someone might be watching. The office smelled of stale coffee and fear. There's something else, she whispered. The cleaning crew refused to service that car. They said it made them sick. Not just the blood, there was something else. A smell they couldn't identify, sweet but wrong. I left the office with more questions than answers. The butterfly earring kept floating through my mind. Who wore it? Where were they now? I found myself driving past the downtown parking garage she'd mentioned, looking for clues that weren't there anymore. The text messages started coming regularly after that, always from different numbers, always brief. Stop looking. You don't understand. Some things are better left buried. I changed my phone number twice, but they kept finding me. I began researching missing persons cases, scrolling through online databases and social media posts. The butterfly earring became my obsession. I sketched it from memory, posted it on forums, asked jewelry stores if they recognized the style. Nothing. Then I found her, a missing person report from 3 months ago. The photo showed a young woman with dark hair and a bright smile. In the picture, she was wearing the same butterfly earring. The report said she disappeared after leaving work one evening. Her car was found abandoned, but she was never seen again. I stared at the photo for hours. She looked so alive, so normal. Someone's daughter, someone's friend. The report mentioned she worked at a small accounting firm, had no enemies, no debts, no reason to vanish. But she was gone, and somehow her earring had ended up in that rental car. I contacted the detective handling her case. He was skeptical at first, but when I described the earring in detail, down to the tiny scratch on the butterfly's wing, his tone changed. Where did you say you found this? I told him about the rental car, the blood, the shredded fabric. He was quiet for a long moment. That car was supposed to be impounded, he said finally. We had a court order. Someone made it disappear from our evidence lot. Now you're telling me it was being rented out to customers. The detective promised to investigate, but I could hear the resignation in his voice. Too much time had passed, too many hands had touched the evidence. The trail was cold, contaminated, worthless. I kept the earring. I know I should have turned it over to the police, but something told me it was safer with me. At night, I would hold it up to the light, studying the delicate craftsmanship, wondering about the person who'd worn it last. The messages became more specific. Give it back. You have something that doesn't belong to you. We know where you live. I started sleeping with the lights on, checking my locks obsessively, looking over my shoulder when I walked to my car. One evening I came home to find my front door slightly ajar. Nothing was missing, but everything felt different. Drawers were opened just a fraction. Cushions were shifted slightly out of place. Someone had been there, searching. They'd been careful, professional, but they'd left traces. I found a note on my kitchen counter, written in neat handwriting. The earring, or we take something else that belongs to you. I thought about the young woman's photo, her smile, her family still hoping she'd come home. I thought about the blood in the rental car, the shredded fabric, the zip ties. I thought about the detective's resigned voice and the rental office worker's frightened eyes. Someone powerful wanted this case to disappear. Someone with enough influence to make evidence vanish from police custody, to turn a crime scene into a rental car, to send anonymous threats without consequence. Someone who knew I'd found what they'd tried to hide. I still have the earring. I've moved twice since then, changed my name, started over in a new place. But I keep it close, this small piece of silver that represents someone's final moments, someone's desperate struggle, someone's stolen life. Sometimes I wonder if I should have stayed quiet, returned the car, pretended I'd never seen anything. But every time I look at that butterfly charm, I remember her face from the missing person report. Someone needs to remember her, needs to carry the weight of what happened, needs to refuse to let her disappear completely. The messages still come less frequently now, but they haven't stopped. We're watching. You can't hide forever. Give us what belongs to us. But it doesn't belong to them. It belongs to her memory, to the truth that someone desperately wants buried. And as long as I have it, as long as I remember her face, she isn't completely gone. I don't know who killed her. I don't know why. I don't know if justice will ever be served. But I know she existed. I know she fought. And I know someone out there is afraid of what I might discover next. The earring sits on my nightstand now, catching the light from my bedside lamp. Sometimes, in the quiet hours before dawn, I hold it in my palm and promise her that I won't stop looking. Someone needs to remember. Someone needs to care. And someone needs to be afraid. Crime 5, it started with one receipt. Someone left it on my windshield, no explanation. Gas station, convenience store, motel, all within driving distance. I followed the trail, one receipt at a time. Each stop had something left behind: shoes, torn clothing, a phone charger still plugged into a wall. The last address was a rundown cabin, no lights, no sound, but when I stepped inside, the floor was stained, deep red. In the corner, taped to the wall, was a photograph of me. Taken from behind, from yesterday. The paper felt oddly warm between my fingers, like it had been held for too long. I stood there in my driveway, staring at the neat columns of numbers, the timestamp, the machine-printed letters that seemed to pulse with purpose. My first instinct was to crumple it up and throw it away, but something about the deliberate placement, the way it had been folded precisely in half and tucked under my wiper blade, made me pause. I drove to the gas station first. The attendant, a young woman with tired eyes and paint-stained fingernails, recognized the receipt immediately. She remembered the customer who had paid for exactly $23.47 in gas, cash. The woman had been nervous, she said, kept looking over her shoulder while fumbling with bills. She had asked about the restroom, then changed her mind and left without using it. But what caught my attention was what she had left behind: a single brown leather shoe, size 7, sitting on the counter near the register. The shoe felt heavy in my hands, expensive leather, barely worn. I turned it over and found a small tear in the heel, like someone had been dragged. The attendant watched me examine it with growing unease. She mentioned that the woman had been limping slightly, favoring her left foot. I asked if she could describe her, but the details were vague: average height, dark hair, wearing a coat that seemed too big for her frame. The convenience store was my next stop. The cashier, an older man with nicotine-stained fingers, pulled out a worn receipt book and flipped through pages until he found the matching transaction: energy drinks, bandages, and antiseptic. He remembered because the woman had paid with crumpled bills, some of them spotted with what looked like rust-colored stains. She had asked about the nearest motel, then bought a prepaid phone card at the last minute. Behind the store, near the dumpster, I found torn clothing, a piece of fabric, navy blue, with what appeared to be blood spatter. The material was good quality, silk blend, the kind of fabric that belonged in an office building or courtroom. I held it up to the light and noticed the careful way it had been torn, not ripped in haste but cut with precision. Someone had taken time to remove evidence, to separate themselves from what they had been wearing. The motel manager was reluctant to talk. He kept glancing at his computer screen, typing with 2 fingers, stopping and starting again. The woman had paid for one night, room 12, but had left before sunrise. She had used a name that sounded made up, he said, and had no identification. What bothered him most was that she had insisted on a ground floor room with a view of the parking lot. She had watched through the window for most of the night, he noticed, because the light had stayed on and the curtains had remained partially open. Room 12 still smelled like fear. The cleaning staff had done their job, but certain scents linger in ways that industrial detergent cannot touch. I found the phone charger plugged into the wall outlet near the bed. The cord was frayed like it had been pulled and tugged repeatedly. The model was recent, expensive, the kind that comes with high-end devices. I unplugged it and noticed that the wall around the outlet was scuffed, as if someone had been charging and unplugging their phone obsessively through the night. The final receipt led me to a cabin tucked away from the main road. The address was handwritten on the back in careful cursive, numbers that seemed to float on the page like they were trying to escape. The building looked abandoned, windows boarded up, paint peeling from the siding, but the path to the door was worn smooth, like someone had been walking it regularly. The door was unlocked. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of copper and something else, something organic and wrong. My footsteps echoed in the empty space, and I could hear my own breathing, shallow and quick. The floorboards creaked under my weight, and I realized that some of them felt softer than others, like they had absorbed moisture and were slowly rotting from within. The stains were everywhere, dark patches that had soaked into the wood, creating an abstract pattern that seemed to tell a story I did not want to read. I knelt down and touched one of the larger stains with my fingertip. It was dry now, but the wood was permanently discolored, warped in places where liquid had pooled and dried repeatedly. In the corner, taped to the wall with surgical precision, was a photograph of me. The image was taken from behind, showing me walking up my own driveway, keys in hand, completely unaware that I was being watched. The timestamp showed it was taken yesterday, just before I had found the first receipt on my windshield. I stared at the photograph, trying to understand what I was seeing. The angle was perfect, taken from across the street, probably with a telephoto lens. Whoever had taken it had been patient, had waited for the right moment when I was perfectly framed in the shot. But what disturbed me most was the quality of the image. It was professionally printed, the kind of photograph that required time and resources to develop. I started to back away from the wall, but then I noticed something else. More photographs tucked behind the first one. Pictures of my car, my house, my workplace. Pictures of me talking to the gas station attendant, examining the shoe, walking into the convenience store. Someone had been documenting my investigation, following me as I followed the trail they had left. My hands started to shake as I pulled out my phone to call for help, but then I stopped. The phone charger from the motel room was still in my pocket, and I realized it fit my device perfectly. I stood there in that cabin, surrounded by evidence of a crime I could not name, holding a charger that belonged to someone who had been watching me, and I understood that I was not the investigator in this story. I was the subject. The receipts, the trail, the carefully placed evidence, it had all been designed to bring me here, to this moment, to this realization. But I still did not know why. I did not know who had orchestrated this elaborate performance or what they wanted from me. I only knew that somewhere in my past, I had done something or seen something or failed to do something that had set this entire sequence in motion. I left the cabin without touching anything else, but as I drove away, I kept checking my rearview mirror, watching for cars that might be following me, looking for signs that the performance was not over. The photograph of me was still taped to that wall, along with all the others, and I knew that someone would be coming back to collect them. The trail of receipts had led me to a crime scene, but I was beginning to suspect that the real crime was still being committed, and I was both the witness and the evidence. Crime 6, it started subtly. I'd look into the mirror and feel disconnected, like I was staring at a stranger wearing my face. The person looking back seemed different somehow, altered by something I couldn't name. One night I noticed something was off. I couldn't recognize the person I'd become. I tested it, moved slowly, watched closely. The reflection showed someone who had been living in this house, but it wasn't the person I remembered being. The eyes weren't right. The smile felt foreign. I wanted to smash the mirror. but when I turned around, the same unfamiliar version of myself was waiting in every surface, every window, every polished door. And this time I understood why. The house had been in my family for decades. My grandmother left it to me when she passed, along with boxes of photographs and documents I'd never bothered to examine. I moved in during the autumn when the light hit the windows at strange angles and cast shadows that seemed to move independently of their sources. The first few weeks felt normal enough. I unpacked, arranged furniture, tried to make the place feel like home. But something about the mirrors bothered me. Not just the one in the bathroom, but all of them. The antique standing mirror in the bedroom, the decorative ones in the hallway, even the black screen of the television when it was turned off. Each reflection felt wrong, like I was looking at someone who shared my features but carried different memories, different guilt. I started avoiding my own gaze. When I brushed my teeth, I'd look down at the sink. When I walked past the hallway mirrors, I'd turn my head, but avoidance only made the feeling stronger. The person in the reflections was becoming more real than I was. The breakthrough came when I finally opened my grandmother's boxes. Photographs dating back 50 years, some in color, most in black and white. My grandmother as a young woman, smiling beside a man I'd never met. More photos of the same man, always in this house, always looking comfortable and at home. In the later photos, he was older, grayer, but still present. Then, abruptly, he disappeared from the pictures entirely. I found a police report folded between the photographs. The paper was yellowed and brittle, but the text was clear. A missing person case from 30 years ago. The man from the photos had been reported missing by his wife. He'd been living in this house, renting the back room from my grandmother. One morning, he simply wasn't there anymore. His belongings remained untouched. His car was still in the driveway, but he had vanished. The wife's statement was detailed and desperate. She described her husband as a gentle man who'd been struggling with depression after losing his job. He'd moved into the rented room to give them both space to think. She'd spoken to him the night before he disappeared. He'd seemed calm, even optimistic. They'd made plans to meet for coffee the following week. My grandmother's statement was shorter, almost dismissive. She claimed she'd barely known the man. He kept to himself, paid his rent on time, never caused trouble. She'd assumed he'd simply left without notice. People did that sometimes, she told the police. They got restless and moved on. But there were inconsistencies. The man's wife insisted he would never leave without his medication, which was found untouched in his room. His wallet was missing, but his identification and credit cards were left behind. Most disturbing was the timeline. My grandmother claimed she'd last seen him on a Tuesday evening. The wife said she'd spoken to him on Wednesday night. Someone was lying. I began to notice details I'd missed before. The back room, which I'd been using for storage, had unusual scorch marks on the wooden floor, the kind that came from acid, not fire. The basement had been recently renovated, but the concrete in one corner looked different from the rest, newer, smoother. The mirror in the bathroom began to make sense. The person staring back at me wasn't a stranger. It was someone living in a house where a man had disappeared, someone who was beginning to understand what might have happened to him. The reflection showed guilt that hadn't been there before, knowledge that changed everything. I contacted the police department and requested the full case file. The investigation had been minimal. A few interviews, a cursory search of the house, then nothing. The case had been classified as a voluntary missing person and quietly forgotten, but the detective's notes revealed something interesting. My grandmother had been the last person to see the man alive, according to the official timeline. She'd also been the one who'd suggested he might have left voluntarily. The detective had noted that my grandmother seemed unusually calm for someone whose tenant had vanished. She'd offered explanations before being asked for them. She cleaned the man's room thoroughly before police arrived, claiming she was preparing it for the next tenant. When pressed about the cleaning, she'd become defensive and ended the interview. I found myself spending hours in front of the mirrors, studying the person looking back. The face was mine, but the knowledge behind the eyes was different now. I was living in a house where someone had died, someone whose disappearance had been carefully orchestrated and covered up. The reflection showed someone who was complicit simply by being here, by inheriting this place and its secrets. The final piece came from a neighbor who lived on the street for 40 years. She remembered the missing man well. He'd been planning to move back in with his wife, she told me. He'd been excited about it, talking about starting over. My grandmother had seemed upset about losing the rental income. The neighbor had heard raised voices coming from the house the night before he disappeared. She'd assumed it was a television program. But my grandmother didn't watch television. She'd always claimed it was too noisy, too intrusive. The raised voices had been real. An argument about money, about the man leaving, about something that had escalated beyond words. I stand in front of the bathroom mirror now, staring at someone who knows too much and can prove too little. The person in the reflection lives in a house built on a lie, sleeps in rooms where a man was murdered, walks across floors that hide evidence of a crime that will never be solved. The missing man's wife died 5 years ago, still waiting for answers that will never come. The reflection shows someone who could call the police, who could demand a proper investigation, who could tear up the basement floor and find what's buried there. But it also shows someone who inherited this house, who depends on it, who would lose everything if the truth came out. The person in the mirror carries the weight of choosing between justice and survival. I touch the glass and feel the cold surface under my fingertips. The reflection touches back, and for a moment we're both trapped on opposite sides of the truth. The person looking back at me isn't a stranger anymore. It's someone who knows exactly what happened in this house, someone who's decided to live with that knowledge rather than act on it. The mirror reflects a killer's accomplice, created not by action but by silence, by the choice to keep living in a house built on unmarked graves. And that person wearing my face is someone I'm still learning to become. Crime 7, it was rusted shut, half buried and chained to a tree stump. I broke the lock with a crowbar and opened it, expecting old tools or junk. Instead, it was lined with speakers and a recorder. I hit play. My own voice came out, panicked, desperate, calling for help, but I never recorded it. I never said those words. I don't even remember being in a place like that, but the voice was mine. And after the recording ended, there was a new one saved, dated that same day. I haven't listened to it yet. I'm scared it might describe what happens next. The metal felt cold against my palms as I lifted the recorder from its foam padding. The digital display showed 17 files, each labeled with dates spanning the past month. My hands trembled as I scrolled through them. Each file bore my name as the speaker, but I had no memory of making any recordings. The chest sat in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by tall grass that whispered secrets in the wind. The tree stump it was chained to looked ancient, its bark scarred and weathered. Someone had gone to great lengths to hide this thing, to keep it secure. But why here? Why my voice? I pressed play on the second file. My voice again, but different this time. Calmer, describing a room I'd never seen, talking about furniture I didn't recognize, mentioning people whose names meant nothing to me. The recording quality was crystal clear, as if I'd been sitting right next to the microphone. But the words coming from my mouth felt foreign, like hearing a stranger speak with my vocal cords. The third file contained a conversation, my voice asking questions and someone else responding in whispers too low to understand. I strained to hear the other person, but their words were deliberately muffled. Only my responses came through clearly, and they painted a picture of someone desperate for answers, someone who knew more than they were letting on. I drove home with the recorder in my passenger seat, its weight heavier than metal should be. The familiar streets looked different somehow, as if I was seeing them through someone else's eyes. Every shadow seemed to hold a secret, every passerby a potential threat. The paranoia felt justified, even if I couldn't explain why. At home, I sat in my kitchen with the recorder between my hands. The digital display showed 4 more files had appeared since I'd last checked. The timestamps were from today, from this afternoon, from after I'd found the chest. The 4th file was my voice describing the field where I'd found the chest. Every detail matched perfectly, the angle of the tree stump, the color of the rust, even the way the grass moved in the breeze. But I was describing it as if I'd been there before, as if I'd visited that place many times. The voice on the recording spoke with familiarity about a location I'd supposedly discovered by accident. I called the police, but explaining the situation felt impossible. How do you report finding your own voice talking about things you've never done? The officer on the phone listened with patience that felt rehearsed, taking notes I suspected would never be reviewed. He suggested I might need to speak with someone about stress, about memory issues, about the strain of modern life. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the muffled voice in the 3rd recording. Something about the rhythm of their speech felt familiar, like a song I'd heard before but couldn't place. I played it again and again, adjusting the volume, trying to catch even a single clear word. The next morning, 2 more files had appeared. The 5th one was a phone conversation, my voice speaking to someone about meeting arrangements, about keeping things quiet, about making sure nobody would find out. The person on the other end was clearer this time, their voice still disguised but understandable. They called me by a nickname I'd never heard before, spoke about shared experiences I couldn't remember. I started keeping a journal, documenting every detail of my daily routine. If I was somehow creating these recordings without knowing it, I needed to find the gaps in my memory. But the more I wrote, the more inconsistencies I discovered. There were hours I couldn't account for, entire afternoons that felt like blank pages in my mind. The 6th file contained my voice reading from what sounded like a diary entry. The words were intimate, personal, describing feelings and fears I'd never shared with anyone, but they weren't my feelings. The voice talked about guilt that kept me awake, about decisions that haunted my dreams. It spoke of someone who'd been hurt, someone who deserved better, someone who'd trusted me completely. I contacted a private investigator, a woman with tired eyes and stained coffee cups permanently attached to her desk. She listened to the recordings without judgment, taking notes in shorthand that looked like hieroglyphics. When I finished explaining, she leaned back in her chair and asked the question I'd been avoiding. Have you considered that you might actually be the one making these recordings? The possibility had occurred to me, but I'd pushed it away. The alternative explanations felt safer, elaborate pranks, identity theft, some kind of sophisticated hoax. But the investigator's question forced me to confront the growing certainty that I was somehow involved in something I couldn't remember. She agreed to help, but her first suggestion chilled me. We needed to visit the field where I'd found the chest to look for additional evidence. The idea of returning to that place filled me with dread I couldn't explain. It was just an empty field, just grass and trees and sky. But something about it felt wrong, like stepping into a room where someone had recently died. We drove out together the next afternoon. The field looked different in daylight, smaller somehow, less mysterious. The tree stump was still there, but the chain that had secured the chest was gone. The investigator walked in slow circles, taking photographs, making measurements. She found tire tracks that looked fresh, footprints that didn't match mine. "Someone's been here recently," she said, crouching next to a patch of disturbed earth. "Multiple people, actually. This isn't just your story anymore." That night, 3 new files appeared on the recorder. The 7th one was a confrontation, my voice angry and accusatory, demanding answers from someone who remained silent. The 8th was an apology, my voice broken and pleading, asking for forgiveness for something I couldn't identify. The 9th was different altogether. It was my voice, but speaking to me directly, as if the person making the recording knew I would eventually be listening. "You're getting close to understanding," the voice said, "but you're not ready for the truth yet. You never were good at handling difficult realities. That's why we had to do this the hard way." I played that recording dozens of times, analyzing every word, every pause, every breath. The voice was definitely mine, but the tone was wrong. It spoke with confidence I'd never possessed, with knowledge I'd never acquired. It was my voice, but it wasn't me. The investigator called with news that made my blood run cold. She'd traced the recorder's serial number to a purchase made 6 months ago. The buyer had used my name, my address, my credit card, but I had no memory of making the purchase, no record of it in my financial statements. Someone had been using my identity, but the someone was apparently me. The final recordings appeared all at once, 5 new files that told a story I wasn't prepared to hear. My voice describing a plan that spanned months, talking about manipulation and deception with clinical detachment. The recordings revealed a side of myself I'd never known existed, someone capable of elaborate schemes and calculated cruelty. But the most disturbing part wasn't what the voice revealed about my actions. It was what it revealed about my memories. The recordings suggested that everything I thought I knew about myself was carefully constructed fiction. The gaps in my memory weren't random. They were deliberate, strategic, designed to protect me from knowledge I couldn't handle. I sit here now with the recorder in front of me, its display showing one final file that appeared just moments ago. The timestamp indicates it was created while I was writing this, but I never stopped typing. The file is labeled with tomorrow's date, and I know that when I play it, I'll hear my own voice describing what happens next. The truth is waiting inside that digital file, but I'm not sure I want to know what it contains. Sometimes ignorance feels safer than knowledge. Sometimes the lies we tell ourselves are kinder than the truth we're hiding from. But the recorder is here, and the file is waiting, and somewhere in the depths of my fractured memory, I think I already know what my voice is going to tell me about who I really am and what I've really done. Crime 8, the first photo was taped to my front door, just a shot of my hallway. I assumed it was a prank, but then more came, my bedroom, my bathroom, inside my fridge. Each one showed a different part of my home, taken from the inside and always at just the right angle to show me wasn't alone. I changed the locks, still more photos came. Finally, I found one taped to my mirror. It showed me sleeping, but I don't remember ever being in that position. The angle was too high. Like it was taken from the ceiling. I started documenting everything. Each photo arrived with surgical precision, always when I was away from home. The paper felt expensive between my fingers, glossy and cold, professional quality. Someone had invested in this, someone who knew my routines better than I knew them myself. The smell hit me first when I walked into my kitchen after finding the 4th photo. Something metallic, like old pennies left in a jar. My hands shook as I opened the refrigerator door. Nothing seemed out of place, but that smell lingered. I checked the expiration dates on everything. Nothing had gone bad, yet the odor persisted, clinging to my clothes even after I left the room. I called my building security company. They reviewed the footage from the hallway cameras. Nothing unusual, no strangers, just me, my neighbors, and the delivery personnel we all recognized. The security guard suggested I might have a hidden camera problem, but after tearing apart my apartment, I found nothing. No devices, no wires, no evidence of any surveillance equipment. The photos kept coming, each one more intimate than the last. Me brushing my teeth, me reading on my couch, me standing in my closet holding up different shirts, but the angles were impossible. Some shots came from corners where no person could stand, others from heights that defied logic. I began to question my own memory. Had I really been alone during those moments? I started staying awake, listening for sounds that didn't belong. The building settled differently now. Every creak became a footstep. Every whisper of wind through the vents became breathing. I installed motion sensors in every room, but they never triggered. The photos continued to appear, always when the sensors showed no movement inside my apartment. My neighbor from across the hall mentioned seeing me leaving my apartment at odd hours, but I remembered being home those nights, watching television, reading case files from work. She described me walking differently, carrying a bag she'd never seen before. When I asked her to describe this bag, she became vague, uncertain. Her voice carried a tremor that hadn't been there before. The breakthrough came when I found a photo that hadn't been taped to any surface. It was tucked inside my morning newspaper, between the local news and the sports section. This photo showed my apartment from the outside, taken from the building across the street, but it was taken during a snowstorm that had happened 3 weeks earlier. I remembered that storm clearly because I'd been sick with fever, delirious, and bedridden for days. In this photo, someone stood at my window, a silhouette backlit by the warm glow of my living room lamp. The figure's posture was familiar, but the face was hidden in shadow. My hands trembled as I studied the image. The figure wore my favorite sweater, the one with the torn sleeve that I'd never bothered to repair, the one I'd been wearing during my fever. I checked my phone's photo gallery, hundreds of pictures I didn't remember taking. Pictures of my own apartment, shot from impossible angles. Pictures of myself sleeping, eating, showering, all taken from my own device. The metadata showed they were captured during periods when I had no memory of using my phone. Some were taken during the nights I thought I was lying awake, listening for intruders. My reflection in the bathroom mirror looked different now. Not older, not tired, but somehow displaced, like I was seeing myself from the outside. The mirror itself had been photographed countless times, always from an angle that suggested someone standing behind me. But I was always alone in these images, always. The final photo arrived differently. Instead of being taped to a surface, it was placed carefully on my kitchen counter, weighted down by my own car keys. Keys I thought I'd left by the front door. This photo showed my apartment from above, as if taken from a drone hovering in my living room. Every detail was perfect, every shadow precisely rendered, but the apartment was empty. No furniture, no belongings, just bare walls and clean floors. I recognized the space, but it wasn't my current apartment. It was my childhood bedroom, photographed from the same impossible angle. The room where I'd spent countless hours alone, talking to myself, creating elaborate scenarios where I was both the detective and the criminal. The room where I'd learned to watch myself from the outside, to become both observer and observed. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. The message contained only an address, my address, but not my current address. The address from 15 years ago, when I'd lived alone for the first time, when I'd started keeping detailed journals about my neighbors, when I'd begun collecting photographs of people who didn't know they were being watched. I found the journals buried in a box I'd forgotten I owned. Page after page of observations, written in handwriting that looked like mine but felt foreign. Detailed notes about routines, about the perfect times to enter apartments, about the thrill of being invisible in someone else's space. The handwriting grew more erratic as the entries progressed, filled with descriptions of watching people sleep, of moving objects in their homes, of leaving gifts they would never understand. The last entry was dated yesterday, in my handwriting, but in words I didn't remember writing. It described the perfect way to photograph someone without them knowing. It explained how to make them feel watched without ever being seen. It detailed the satisfaction of making someone question their own memory, their own reality. I am still receiving photos. They arrive with the same precision, the same impossible angles. But now I understand why the quality is so professional, why the timing is so perfect. I understand why my neighbor sees me leaving at odd hours, why my motion sensors never trigger, why my own phone contains images I don't remember taking. The person taking these photos knows my routines perfectly because they are me, but they are also not me. They are the version of myself that exists in the spaces between sleep and waking, between memory and forgetting. The version that has been documenting my life from the outside, creating evidence of surveillance that I am both victim and perpetrator of. I continue to change my locks. I continue to search for hidden cameras. I continue to document each new photo, building a case against an intruder who lives inside my own mind. The photos keep coming, and I keep forgetting that I am the one taking them. Each morning, I wake up with dirty fingernails and the taste of photo developer chemicals in my mouth. The investigation continues. The evidence mounts, but the suspect remains invisible, hiding in plain sight, watching through my own eyes, documenting my life with the patience of someone who has all the time in the world because they are me, and I am them, and we are both the watcher and the watched in a case that can never be solved because the crime is the investigation itself. Crime 9, it was a nice jacket, cheap but well made. I only noticed something was off when I felt a lump near the inner lining. I thought maybe a tag or foam padding. I cut it open. A tooth fell out, human, yellowed, cracked. I checked the pockets, found a ticket stub and a photo torn in half. It showed someone standing in front of a house, face scratched out. I returned to the store, but no one remembered taking the jacket. No record, no tag, no receipt. That night I woke up to the sound of footsteps. Someone was pacing in the hall, wearing my jacket. The tooth sat on my kitchen counter for 3 days. I kept staring at it, turning it over in my palm. The enamel was chipped, revealing dark pulp underneath. A molar, definitely. Someone had carefully sewn it into the jacket's lining with surgical precision. The stitching was too neat, too deliberate to be random. I called the thrift store again. The manager, a woman with a tired voice, insisted they had no records of donations from that week, but something in her tone made me push harder. She finally admitted they sometimes took items after hours, left in boxes by the back door. No questions asked, no paperwork. The ticket stub was faded, but I could make out partial numbers. A movie theater, maybe, or a bus. The paper felt old, brittle between my fingers. The photo bothered me more. Why scratch out the face so violently? The scratches went deep, tearing through the paper. Whoever did this was angry. I started wearing the jacket again. Don't ask me why. Maybe I needed to understand who had worn it before me. The pockets held traces of their life, lint that smelled like cigarettes and something floral. A receipt fragment for pharmacy items, aspirin, bandages, things that suggested pain or preparation for it. The footsteps returned, always the same pattern, slow, deliberate pacing in the hallway outside my bedroom. I'd lie perfectly still, listening. Sometimes I'd hear the jacket's fabric rustling, the distinctive sound of its zipper sliding down, but when I checked, the hall was empty. The jacket hung in my closet, undisturbed. I took the photo to a print shop. The clerk, a young man with ink-stained fingers, examined it under a magnifying glass. He said something interesting. The scratches weren't made with a pen or pencil. They looked like fingernail marks, deep and desperate. Someone had clawed at this photo repeatedly. The house in the background was ordinary. 2 stories, white siding, a red door, but there was something off about the proportions. The windows were too small, or maybe the door was too large. The perspective felt wrong, like looking at a funhouse mirror. I drove through different neighborhoods searching for that house. It took weeks, but I found it, or something close to it. The red door was now blue, the siding had been painted gray, but the window placement matched. I sat in my car across the street, watching. An elderly woman came out to collect her mail. She moved slowly, favoring her left leg. When she noticed me watching, she didn't wave or smile. She just stood there, staring back. Her expression was unreadable, but something about her posture suggested she was expecting me. I crossed the street, asked about the house, about previous owners. She listened without interrupting, then invited me inside. The interior smelled like old wood and something medicinal. She made tea with shaking hands, the china cups rattling against their saucers. She told me about the previous owner, a man who kept to himself, worked nights, came home with dirt under his fingernails. She never knew his name, only that he disappeared one day, left everything behind. The house sat empty for months before new owners moved in. The woman paused, studying my face. Then she asked if I was wearing his jacket. The question hit me like cold water. I hadn't mentioned the jacket, hadn't described it, but she knew. She'd seen it before. She led me to her front window, pointed to where she used to see him standing in his yard, always wearing that same jacket, even in warm weather, always smoking, always watching the street. She remembered the way he'd touch his jaw like something hurt, like he was missing something. I pulled out the tooth. Her reaction was immediate. She stepped back, her hand flying to her mouth. She'd seen him do that, she whispered, touch his face, probe the gap where a tooth should be. He'd lost it in some kind of accident, she thought, or maybe it was removed. She never asked. The pharmacy receipt suddenly made sense. Pain medication, antiseptic, materials for cleaning wounds or covering up evidence of them. That night I sat in my kitchen, holding the tooth and staring at the photo. The scratched-out face wasn't hiding identity, it was hiding expression. Someone had been so disturbed by what they saw in that face that they'd tried to erase it completely. I held the photo up to the light. Through the scratches I could make out the shadow of features, a smile that didn't reach the eyes, an expression that suggested satisfaction or maybe hunger, the kind of face that would make someone desperate to forget. The jacket felt heavier now, like it was carrying more than just fabric and thread. I checked the lining again, running my fingers along every seam. There in the shoulder area, another small bulge. Another careful incision revealed a small piece of paper rolled tight, a name and address written in careful script. I drove to the address. The building was gone, replaced by a parking lot, but the neighboring businesses remembered. A dental office had operated there for decades. The dentist had retired suddenly, they said, left town without notice. Patients had been transferred to other practices, but some records were never claimed. I found the dentist's home address through public records. The house was dark, newspapers piled on the front step. A neighbor mentioned he'd moved away, maybe to live with family. But there was something uncertain in their voice, like they weren't sure he'd moved at all. The pieces were forming a picture I didn't want to complete. A man who worked nights who was missing a tooth, a dentist who disappeared, a jacket that held secrets in its lining, and footsteps that echoed in my hallway, wearing the weight of someone else's guilt. I stopped wearing the jacket, but the footsteps continued, and sometimes, late at night, I'd find it hanging in different places, never where I left it, always positioned as if someone had just taken it off, still warm from body heat that wasn't mine. The tooth sits in my desk drawer now, wrapped in tissue paper. I tell myself I should throw it away or turn it over to police, but I know they'd ask questions I can't answer. About voices in the night, about jackets that move by themselves, about the growing certainty that I'm not the only one living in this house. The truth is, I don't think the previous owner ever really left. I think he's still here, still wearing his jacket, still walking the halls. And I think he's been waiting for someone to find what he left behind, someone to understand what he did and why he hid the evidence so carefully. Some nights I hear him trying to tell me something, a whisper that sounds like an apology or maybe a confession. But I pretend to sleep because I'm afraid of what I might learn, afraid of what I might become if I listen too closely. The jacket hangs in my closet, patient and quiet, waiting for the next person who thinks they've found a bargain, waiting to share its secrets with someone braver than me, someone willing to follow the evidence wherever it leads, even if it leads to places that good people aren't supposed to go. Story 10. The parcel arrived without a hint of its origins. No return label, no tracking number, just a humble cardboard box tinged with the morning dew. It wasn't intended for her, the address matched hers, but the name was foreign. Sarah Miller hesitated, a fleeting thought nudging her to leave it untouched on her porch. However, curiosity whispered its seductive plea, and she succumbed. With delicate hands, she unsealed the box, anticipating mundane contents like books or clothing. Yet nestled within was a relic of the past, a VHS tape, accompanied by a solitary sticky note that simply read, "Watch alone." Sarah held the black plastic cassette in her hands, its weight feeling oddly burdensome, as though carrying the weight of forbidden secrets. Her fingertips lingered over the worn edges, tracing the imperfections etched into the casing. The handwritten note bore the imprint of urgency, each stroke of the pen exuding a sense of haste. Amidst the backdrop of suburban tranquility, the distant bark of a dog, the laughter of playing children, the drone of a lawnmower, a sense of unease settled upon Sarah. Bringing the mysterious package indoors, she placed it on her kitchen counter, uncertainty clouding her judgment. The name Daniel Whitaker held no significance in her memory. 4 years in that house, and never had she received mail for a person by that name. The previous occupants, the Johnsons, had bid farewell to the neighborhood, leaving behind memories of their golden years. Curiosity warred with apprehension as Sarah's gaze flitted to the dusty VCR, a relic of nostalgia gathering dust. Against her better judgment, Sarah inserted the tape, static hissing before coalescing into a dimly lit room on the screen. The camera's angle was askew, casting a shadow over a man seated in a wooden chair. "My name is Daniel Whitaker." His voice, quiet yet resolute, filled the room. "If you're watching this, they've found you, and they'll find me too." As he leaned closer, his worn visage emerged from the shadows, eyes hollow with exhaustion, stubble adorning his weary face. "I didn't harm her. You must know that they've fabricated evidence against me, planted false trails to lead to my undoing." The camera trembled as Daniel adjusted it, offering glimpses of his stark surroundings, a barren room, devoid of comfort, a temporary sanctuary for a man on the run. "They've orchestrated everything. The narrative will claim I knew her, that we quarreled, that witnesses heard our disputes, but it's all a lie. I first laid eyes on Catherine Walsh through the lens of tragedy." His voice quivered, dead, murdered in her home. And yet my fingerprints, my DNA, painted a damning picture of guilt. Detective Eliza Ramirez scrutinized the identical VHS tape before her, the latest in a series of cryptic messages from the elusive Daniel Whitaker, a man branded as the prime suspect in Catherine Walsh's murder, a man who had vanished into thin air upon the discovery of her lifeless form. The case of Walsh initially seemed open and shut, a young professional strangled in her sanctuary, evidence pointing unquestionably to Whitaker, a man with a past entwined with minor infractions. The arrival of the tapes muddied the waters, injecting doubt into the narrative. Ramirez jotted down her thoughts, contemplating the enigma before her. Whitaker dances on the precipice of truth and deceit, a puppet in a grand charade or a harbinger of darker truths. Her gaze flitted across the evidence board, images of a vibrant Walsh juxtaposed with the grim reality of her demise, a web of deceit woven by unseen hands. A startling revelation emerged as Ramirez delved deeper into Walsh's past, a whistleblower against PharmaCorp, a titan in the pharmaceutical realm with tendrils reaching into governmental spheres. Walsh had unearthed damning evidence of malpractice hidden within the confines of clinical trials. She was set to testify, a hushed confession from a former colleague revealed, eyes darting nervously towards the exit. Catherine held the key, documents that incriminated the executives, proof of their treachery. The trial loomed on the horizon. Inconsistencies began to surface, painting a sinister portrait of manipulation. The DNA evidence seemed too precise, strategically placed to implicate Whitaker. Witness statements felt rehearsed, devoid of authenticity. Security footage inexplicably corrupted, erasing vital moments surrounding the crime. Sarah Miller found herself entangled in the unfolding drama, a second package bearing the weight of truth arriving at her doorstep, a trove of documents exposing PharmaCorp's malevolence, bearing Walsh's digital signature, a testament to her courage. Ramirez connected the dots, tracing Whitaker's clandestine journey through the recipients of the tapes. A former IT security specialist, he stumbled upon Walsh's plight within PharmaCorp's labyrinthine systems. They surveilled her, Whitaker revealed in a subsequent tape. I glimpsed the orders, the monitoring. They knew she held damning evidence. And then I was locked out, a pariah overnight, framed for a crime I never committed. The tide turned when Sarah noticed a crucial detail in her copy of the tape, a reflection hinting at a storage unit's location. Teaming up with Ramirez, they unearthed the truth within Unit 217 Whitaker's journal, a chronicle of the conspiracy, Walsh's incriminating files, and a damning trail leading back to PharmaCorp's head of security, a puppeteer orchestrating Whitaker's downfall. Justice unfolded not in a blaze of glory, but through the meticulous assembly of irrefutable evidence. 3 executives faced indictment, the security head turning state's witness, unraveling the web of deceit. The tainted drug was yanked from consideration, a victory for truth amidst a sea of lies. Whitaker emerged from the shadows, hollowed by his time as a fugitive. The charges against him dissolved, but scars etched upon his soul. A chance encounter between Sarah and Whitaker on her porch brought closure, a moment of reflection amid chaos. "Why me?" Sarah inquired, seeking solace in the randomness of fate. Whitaker's gaze met hers, weariness etched into his features. "The algorithm chose you. I needed allies untainted by bias, unbridled by the media's verdict, individuals who dared to seek the truth amidst a storm of lies." In quietude they stood, 2 strangers bound by an unforeseen truth, pondering the thin veil separating justice from deception. Sarah's parting words lingered in the air. "The wrong address led us to the right destination." The VHS tapes, emblems of a tangled saga, were cataloged as a reminder that verity often arrives in enigmatic packages, bearing unfamiliar names, awaiting a courageous soul to unveil its secrets. Story 11. In the quiet stillness of the night, the hotel stood as a relic of a forgotten era. Its faded facade hinted at stories untold, a place where transient souls sought respite for just a fleeting moment. The weary clerk, weathered by time, handed her the key with a cryptic gaze that lingered in the shadows of his eyes. "Just don't take the last door on the left," his voice barely above a whisper that carried a weight of unspoken secrets. Curiosity danced on the edges of her thoughts as she ascended the creaking stairs to her room. The hallway stretched before her, bathed in a dim, ethereal light that seemed to flicker and sway like a ghostly dance. And there it was, the last door on the left, beckoning her with an icy touch as she reached for the handle. Its surface was unremarkable, blending seamlessly with its companions, yet there was a presence, a whisper from the other side that sent a shiver down her spine. Detective Morgan Reed, a seeker of truths hidden in the shadows, found herself drawn into the tapestry of mystery woven within that forsaken room. The air was heavy with the scent of iron, a metallic tang that spoke of dark deeds done in silence. Blood had seeped into the fabric of the floor, a macabre stain that bore witness to the tragedy that had unfolded within those walls. Amidst the chaos of the crime scene, a young woman lay still, her porcelain features frozen in eternal repose. Reed knelt beside the fallen figure, her gaze tracing the contours of a life stolen too soon. The forensic technician moved with practiced precision, capturing the scene in a dance of light and shadow, each click of the camera echoing like a somber requiem. Another one, his voice carried the weariness of one who had seen too much, known too much of the darkness that lurked in the hearts of men. As the investigation unfurled like a twisted tapestry, Reed delved into the depths of the victim's life, seeking the threads that would unravel the truth. Elaine Werner, a woman of grace and poise, had met her end in a place where shadows danced with malevolence. The pieces of the puzzle began to align, painting a portrait of a predator who stalked unseen in the corridors of power. The trail led Reed to a man of influence, a man whose facade of respectability crumbled under the weight of his sins. Charles Emerson, a figure of authority, stood at the center of the storm, his mask slipping to reveal the darkness that dwelled within. Secrets spilled like blood from a wound, staining the polished veneer of his life with the mark of a predator. In the hush of the courtroom, justice unfurled its wings, casting a light on the shadows that had long obscured the truth. Emerson's fate was sealed, a sentence of eternal confinement for crimes that defied comprehension. And yet, as Reed's gaze met his, she saw not a man but a void, a hollow emptiness where a soul should have resided. The echoes of the door on the left case reverberated through the annals of time, a cautionary tale of the monsters that lurked in the guise of men. And as Reed walked down the corridors of her memories, she carried with her the weight of those lost souls, their whispers lingering in the silence of the night. The keys to those forbidden doors remained in the vault of her mind, a reminder that some secrets were never meant to see the light of day. Story 12. The old Polaroid held secrets within its faded hues, a relic of a birthday celebration long past. Among the familiar smiles and flickering candles, there lurked an unsettling presence. Inherited by the daughter, Sarah Winters, from her mother's attic, the box of nostalgic memories revealed a chilling anomaly. A mysterious figure, shrouded in shadow, positioned subtly in the background of each photograph. Unseen by those captured in the frames, he appeared to draw closer with each passing image. Sarah's discovery unfolded as she sifted through the collection of family photos, hoping for solace but finding only the beginning of a haunting mystery. The first glimpse of the enigmatic figure was barely discernible, a mere silhouette on the periphery of her 7th birthday snapshot. By the subsequent photos, his presence grew more pronounced, moving from the outskirts to the heart of the gatherings without a trace of recognition from anyone in the pictures. Alarmed and trembling, Sarah reached out to her father, seeking answers to the inexplicable enigma. but his response was laden with disbelief and unease, denying the existence of any unknown man in the cherished family memories. With a heavy heart, Sarah turned to Detective Marcus Reed, laying out the eerie progression of the shadowy figure's advance through the photographs on the precinct desk. As rain whispered against the windows, casting dancing shadows in the dimly lit room, the detective's scrutiny delved into the unsettling truth revealed in the images. The figure's gradual approach towards the children in the pictures was undeniable, a calculated movement that defied logic and explanation. Despite attempts to rationalize his presence as a trick of perception, the evidence spoke of a chilling reality that transcended the boundaries of the visible. Further investigation unveiled a sinister connection buried within the depths of time. Enhanced images and forensic analysis brought to light details that linked the mysterious figure to a dark past of unsolved child abductions. Robert Keller, a long-lost maintenance worker with a haunting history, emerged as the hidden specter lurking behind the facade of joyous family gatherings. With the discovery of remains and buried artifacts linked to the missing children, the pieces of a grim puzzle fell into place, painting a harrowing portrait of concealed horrors that had haunted generations. Sarah, alone in her contemplation, confronted the unsettling truth that some threats exist unseen, moving through the veil of celebration with silent malevolence. As she returned the photos to their resting place, now transformed into evidence of a chilling past, Sarah pondered the enigmatic figure captured in the frozen moments of time. A reminder that amidst the facade of happiness, dangers unseen could linger, waiting to be unveiled by the relentless pursuit of justice. And so, the shadow in the family photos finally faced the light of accountability, his legacy of hidden terrors exposed to the world, a testament to the enduring power of truth in dispelling the darkness that lurks within the folds of memory. Story 13. In the quiet of a suburban neighborhood, a mysterious key arrived in the mail for Sarah Miller. It came wrapped in a plain envelope devoid of any return address. The key itself was a simple brass, aged by time and wear. Sarah didn't recognize it, yet a strange sense of familiarity washed over her as she held it in her hand. With curiosity piqued, she tried the key in every lock she owned, but none would turn. It belonged to no door she knew. Setting it down on her coffee table, a peculiar occurrence unfolded. The old grandfather clock in the hallway, long silenced by brokenness, emitted a single, hollow chime as if acknowledging the presence of the key. Perplexed and unsettled, Sarah reported the strange event to the authorities. What initially seemed like a minor peculiarity soon unraveled into a dark and disturbing investigation that would grip the entire neighborhood in fear. The responding officer at first dismissed Sarah's concerns as a simple mix-up. A key in the mail, he suggested, could be an innocent mistake, but Sarah's intuition whispered otherwise. She couldn't shake the feeling of wrongness that clung to the key and its mysterious arrival. Reluctantly, the officer took the key as evidence, placing it in a small evidence bag. Little did he know that this seemingly insignificant key would open the door to a chilling journey into the depths of human darkness. Detective Robert Harmon, a seasoned investigator with a knack for unraveling complex cases, received the file during the morning briefing. The brass key sat on his desk, unassuming yet radiating an aura of unease. Background checks on Sarah revealed nothing suspicious. She was a retired English teacher, a widow with grown children living far away. Her life seemed ordinary, untouched by criminality or malice. Forensic analysis of the key yielded no fingerprints except Sarah's. The envelope bore no clues, only a generic postmark. The key itself, a common Schlage, showed signs of age but held no extraordinary secrets. The breakthrough came unexpectedly when Detective Harmon decided to delve deeper into the key's origins. A match was found in a cold case from 7 years prior, a key with an identical bidding pattern linked to a storage unit where horrors beyond imagination had been discovered. The investigation had hit a dead end back then, unable to identify the suspect. But now the key had resurfaced, leading the detectives down a path of unspeakable truths. As the case unfolded, Sarah's unease grew, prompting her to fortify her home with new locks and security measures. The shadow of fear loomed large, casting a pall over her once peaceful existence. The key became a symbol of terror, a macabre link to a past buried in darkness. Why had it been sent to Sarah? What sinister purpose lay behind this twisted gesture? Further investigations revealed a chilling connection to a former neighbor, Harold Jenkins. A man shrouded in mystery, Jenkins had lived near Sarah before disappearing without a trace. The manhunt for Jenkins expanded, uncovering a trail of deception and horror. Behind his facade of normalcy lurked a predator, hidden in plain sight among unsuspecting neighbors. The true extent of Jenkins' depravity came to light when a hidden room filled with keys and unimaginable horrors was unearthed beneath his deceased mother's cabin. The keys, each engraved with a name and date, told a gruesome tale of lives extinguished in silence. Forensic teams discovered human remains buried behind the cabin, exposing a legacy of unspeakable crimes that spanned years. The keys, silent witnesses to unspeakable atrocities, painted a harrowing picture of the darkness that had festered undetected for far too long. The manhunt for Jenkins reached a climax as authorities closed in on him in the wilderness. In a final, desperate act, Jenkins took his own life, leaving behind a journal that detailed his heinous acts and a chilling message for Sarah. The investigation unearthed a total of 32 victims, bringing closure to families long haunted by uncertainty. Sarah, forever changed by the ordeal, never returned to her home, haunted by the knowledge of how close she had come to unimaginable horror. The case of the Keymaster stands as a stark reminder of the monsters that can hide behind a facade of normalcy. Jenkins' chilling legacy serves as a cautionary tale, urging vigilance against the darkness that lurks in the most unexpected places. Amidst the silence of an evidence locker, a collection of brass keys remains a somber testament to lives cut short and the enduring quest for justice in the face of unspeakable evil. Story 14, the old apartment exuded a sense of history, its creaking floors and whispering walls telling tales of times long past. The heating system groaned in protest, the pipes rattled like a secret language spoken only by the building itself. These sounds were familiar, part of the building's character, or so she believed. Until one night, a faint voice, barely audible yet distinct, floated through the vents, weaving its way into her consciousness. It wasn't the usual background noise of neighbors or the building settling, it was a whisper, calling her name in a haunting melody. Intrigued and unnerved, she leaned in closer, pressing her ear against the cold metal grate, her heart quickening with each passing moment. A rush of icy air caressed her cheek, followed by a soft, almost playful declaration, "I know you can hear me." Detective Morgan Shaw found herself in the heart of the empty apartment, a sense of unease settling over her as she focused on the rusted vent cover forcibly removed from the wall. The forensic team moved around her with precision, capturing every detail with their cameras, the flashes of light illuminating the eerie scene. The missing woman, Alina Reeves, had vanished without a trace until a foul odor alerted the building manager to her absence. What they discovered within the ventilation system left them speechless. Officer Patel recited the details from his notepad, detailing Alina's claims of hearing voices through the vents, which the building management had dismissed as mere quirks of an aging building. Shaw knelt by the vent, observing the deep scratches around its edges, etchings that spoke of desperation and fear, as if someone trapped inside had clawed at the metal in a frantic attempt to escape. The realization sent a chill down Shaw's spine. These marks were not made by tools, but by human hands from within. Alina, a beloved kindergarten teacher with a penchant for nurturing both plants and children, had exhibited signs of paranoia before her disappearance. Her sister, during an emotional interview, revealed Alina's growing fear of being watched and spoken to through the vents, a belief dismissed as stress-induced by those around her. Shaw surveyed the apartment anew, noting the meticulously made bed, the solitary coffee mug in the sink, and the chair positioned beneath the vent, as if someone had been seated there, listening intently. The forensic report unveiled unsettling clues: a fiber caught in the vent grill matching Alina's favorite cardigan, a foreign fingerprint on the inside of the vent cover, and chilling audio recordings retrieved from Alina's phone. Alone in her car, rain creating a soothing backdrop, Shaw listened to the recordings, hearing Alina's trembling voice beseeching for a response, only to receive a whispered reply that sent shivers down Shaw's spine. Further investigations into the building's history revealed a disturbing pattern of tenants vacating abruptly, citing strange noises and hallucinations of voices emanating from the walls. The building superintendent, Harold Weber, displayed a disconcerting calmness during questioning, attributing the phenomena to the building's age and dismissing any notion of the supernatural. Yet his demeanor shifted when questioned about apartment 4B's past occupants, a subtle tension betraying his facade of indifference. The case took a macabre turn when a hidden access panel was discovered in Alina's bathroom, leading to a narrow maintenance passage that granted access to the building's ventilation system. Inside, a cache of belongings indicated someone had been living within the walls, observing, listening, and whispering. Shaw's team searched Weber's immaculate apartment, uncovering a trove of incriminating evidence on his computer recordings, photographs, and a digital journal detailing his disturbing fixation on Alina. As they delved deeper, a storage unit rented under Weber's name revealed a chilling collection of mementos from previous tenants, preserved like macabre trophies. Weber's arrest was met with eerie acceptance, his cryptic statements hinting at a dark connection between him, the building, and his victims. The truth emerged during the trial, an intricate web of obsession and manipulation orchestrated by Weber, his twisted fantasies manifesting through the whispers in the walls. Despite the closure brought by Weber's conviction, the shadows of the building lingered, casting a pall over its new occupants. Reports of strange noises, ghostly whispers, and inexplicable drafts persisted, a reminder of the dark secrets buried within the walls. The apartment building stood deserted, a silent witness to the horrors that unfolded within its confines. The echoes of the past mingled with the present, a haunting melody that whispered of a truth too chilling to ignore. And as the building groaned and the pipes rattled, the residents tried to convince themselves it was all just part of an aging structure symphony, a lullaby to soothe their restless souls. Story 15. The house lay silent and still, untouched by life for years on end. Whispers from the neighbors spoke of a young woman who had vanished without a trace, leaving behind a void that echoed through the empty rooms. When the new tenants crossed the threshold, they were met with a chilling discovery: the bedroom door sealed shut from within. With a determined effort, they forced the door open, revealing a scene frozen in time. The air hung heavy with neglect, carrying the weight of years gone by. Yet amidst the layers of dust, an unsettling orderliness pervaded the room. The bed was neatly made, the mirror gleaming spotless. A single candle stood vigil on the desk, its wax now a hardened pool of forgotten tears. The notebook lay open, pages whispering secrets in fresh ink. Detective Morgan delved into its contents, tracing the delicate script of Elise Winters, a young soul lost to the shadows 5 long years ago. Her words danced across the pages with precision and grace until the ink bore down with a desperate plea on that fateful night of her disappearance. "I know he's watching me tonight," the final entry revealed. The same car circles, a silent threat in the night. I reach out for help, but my cries fall on deaf ears. If darkness claims me, remember it was no chance encounter. The detective closed the book, a shiver running down his spine as he sealed it away for evidence. The room held a haunting stillness, mingled with a hint of something more, a faint chemical scent lingering in the air. The landlord lingered in the doorway, a ghostly figure with a troubled gaze. "We combed over every inch of this place before it was listed," he muttered, his voice hollow with disbelief. "That door should never have been locked." Elise's life had woven through the corridors of a prestigious law firm, her days spent unraveling the tangled threads of corporate deceit. Colleagues spoke of a meticulous soul, driven to uncover the truths hidden in the shadows. Yet, as the days slipped by, whispers of her withdrawal echoed through the halls, a silent prelude to her vanishing. In the stillness of the bedroom, the detective sought answers in the absence of clues. No signs of struggle marred the scene, no crimson stain to tell a tale of violence. It was as if time itself had paused, capturing a moment of suspended reality, a moment waiting for its author to return. Beneath the unyielding gaze of the unscented candle, the truth lay hidden in plain sight. The forensic team unearthed fragments of a puzzle, each piece leading deeper into a labyrinth of deception. A hidden compartment revealed a key and a flash drive, unlocking a vault of damning revelations. The papers whispered of transactions veiled in shadows, of numbers manipulated to hide the cost of greed. Voices trapped in digital echoes spoke of a medication tainted by lies, of lives sacrificed on the altar of corporate gain. Elise's voice, clear and unwavering, stood in stark contrast to the shadowy figures of power. As the truth unfurled, tendrils of corruption reached out from the shadows, entwining the fate of the guilty in a web of justice. Vincent Harriman, a man of influence, stood at the center of the storm, his hands stained with the blood of the innocent. The detective's pursuit led him down hidden paths, through secret tunnels that wound beneath the foundations of the old neighborhood. The truth lay buried in the walls, waiting to be unearthed by those brave enough to seek it. In a courtroom bathed in harsh light, the echoes of Elise's courage resounded. Her mother's voice carried the weight of a life cut short, a legacy of truth left behind in a room frozen in time. Justice, though delayed, found its mark on those who thought themselves untouchable. The house, once a sanctuary of shadows, stood empty once more, a silent witness to the battles fought within its walls. Whispers of a light flickering in the night sky lingered, a reminder of a soul who refused to be silenced. In the end, it was not the darkness that claimed Elise, but the light of truth that shone from the room she left behind. Her legacy, a beacon in the night, a testament to the power of a single voice against the tyranny of silence. Story 16. The real estate listing made no mention of a basement. The blueprints offered no clue to its existence. However, when the family decided to remove the worn carpet, a hidden door was revealed. A door with a heavy, rusted handle that took the strength of 3 to pry open. As the door creaked open, a rush of stale air, heavy with the scent of damp earth, greeted them. Dark steps led downward, disappearing into the unknown depths. Expecting to find a storage area, they were instead confronted with a solitary chair beneath a swaying light bulb, casting eerie shadows on the wall behind it. And on that wall, a chilling display, a row of photographs featuring them, taken from inside their own home. The Mercer family had settled into the suburban residence during the cold grip of winter, when early darkness cloaked the neighborhood in mystery. The aging 2-story house, with its weathered facade and creaking floors, had whispered promises of character and history to the family. Little did they know the extent of history the house held, a history set to collide violently with their present. Detective Sarah Connors and her partner arrived at the scene, the crime unit already cordoning off the area with fluttering yellow tape. Mrs. Mercer's trembling voice had relayed the shocking discovery beneath their living room floor. Connors, her hands gloved in latex, directed the forensic team to meticulously document every detail of the hidden basement. The camera flashes illuminated the narrow stairwell as they descended into the dimly lit space. The basement, no bigger than a standard bedroom, featured concrete walls painted a dull gray. In the center stood a lone chair anchored to the floor. Above it, the stark light bulb cast haunting shadows that danced with an unseen breeze. But it was the line of 37 photographs, meticulously arranged by date, that captured their attention. Each image documented moments from the family's daily life, unsettling in its precision. The investigation yielded no signs of forced entry or theft. The security system had remained silent, leaving only a lingering invasion of privacy and a shattered sense of security in its wake. Fingerprints dotted the basement, most belonging to previous owners of the house. Records revealed a pattern of short-lived ownership, each family departing within a year, each unaware of the hidden chamber. As they delved deeper, connecting with past owners, the mystery only deepened. Blueprints had been altered, permits withdrawn, and inspection reports tampered with. The breakthrough came from a contractor who had renovated the house years ago. His denial of the basement's existence sent shivers down their spines. The memory card found concealed in the light fixture unveiled a trove of illicit surveillance images, spanning generations of families who had inhabited the house. Audio files recovered from a hidden box unveiled intimate conversations captured with precision. The revelation of a secret monitoring station and a journal filled with detailed observations pointed to the original builder, Edward Kelvin, a man who had seemingly disappeared during the house's construction, leaving behind a legacy of clandestine surveillance. The manhunt led to the discovery of Edward Kelvin, his frail form hidden within the house's walls. His distorted perception of ownership painted the families as mere players in his private drama, unwittingly starring in his twisted narrative. His fixation on documenting their lives had consumed him, blurring the lines between guardian and intruder. The families, including the Mercers, fled the house, leaving behind belongings and memories tainted by Kelvin's voyeuristic obsession. The trial exposed the intricate network of hidden spaces designed for surveillance, a house turned into a prison of observation. As the property was razed to the ground, the families carried with them the unsettling realization of never truly being alone in their own home. In quiet moments, they still cast wary glances at familiar corners, wondering if the walls held unseen eyes and ears. The violation of their privacy lingered, a ghostly presence that whispered of a past where shadows watched, unseen and unheard. And as the echoes of their shared trauma reverberated through their thoughts, they questioned if they had ever been truly alone, or if they had always been under the watchful gaze of an unseen observer. Story 17. The gentle current flowed lazily that morning, the water reflecting the soft hues of the dawn sky, creating a mirror-like surface. The fisherman, accustomed to the tranquil rhythm of the river, almost missed the peculiar sight of a suitcase bobbing near the shore. At first, he mistook it for a pile of discarded clothes, but a closer look revealed something far more sinister. The foul stench that emanated from the case was thick and suffocating, a scent that lingered and clung to the air. It was wrapped in chains, weathered and rusted from exposure to the elements. When authorities pried open the suitcase, they were met with a gruesome sight. Instead of garments, the case contained a tangle of dark hair, fingers frozen in a silent grasp of despair. And at the very bottom, a chilling note that read, "This isn't the first." Detective Sarah Mercer arrived at the scene, her face hidden behind a delicate handkerchief to shield her from the overwhelming odor. The victim, a woman in her mid-30s named Catherine Walsh, lay before her, her once pale skin now marked by the touch of the river. The medical examiner worked meticulously, cataloging every detail before the body was gently removed from its watery grave. What struck Mercer most was not the gruesome method of disposal, but the eerie care taken in presenting the victim. Catherine Walsh, a successful real estate agent known for her attention to detail, had been meticulously prepared. Her nails were perfectly manicured, her hair styled with precision, and she was dressed in expensive attire. "She wasn't killed here," Mercer murmured, her eyes following the gentle lapping of the water against the muddy bank. She was arranged, almost like a macabre display. As the investigation unfolded, details of Catherine Walsh's life emerged. Divorced and childless, she lived alone in an upscale neighborhood, her home a pristine display of perfection. Her colleagues described her as ambitious and meticulous, a woman who valued her privacy above all else. But behind the facade of perfection lay a darker truth. In Walsh's home office, hidden within a slightly ajar drawer, investigators discovered a leather-bound journal. The final entry sent shivers down Mercer's spine. He's watching again. Same car, different plates. Further digging into Walsh's digital footprint revealed a pattern of unsettling behavior. Unknown emails with a singular message, "I see your perfection," each sent at precisely the same time on different days. Searches for security systems and self-defense tools peppered her browsing history. Mercer pieced together the puzzle slowly, connecting the dots between the victim's meticulous life and the chilling evidence left behind by the killer. "Our perpetrator is methodical," she confided to her partner. This was not a crime of passion, this was a carefully orchestrated ritual. The break in the case came unexpectedly from a local pawnshop owner who recognized Walsh's distinctive emerald necklace among the killer's pawned items. The perpetrator, Michael Linden, a nondescript maintenance worker with a penchant for anonymity, had been stalking Walsh for months. Surveillance footage revealed his frequent visits to her building, his actions carefully timed to coincide with her absences. A search of Linden's humble abode unveiled a chilling collection of photographs, images of Walsh and other women, all sharing a similar appearance. Some faces were marked with a stark red X. Catherine Walsh was not his first victim. Hidden behind a false wall in Linden's closet was a shrine, a twisted homage to his victims. Hairbrushes, lipstick-stained tissues, keys, all meticulously arranged alongside detailed notes on their lives. The killer's meticulous nature was laid bare for all to see. During the interrogation, Lyndon remained eerily composed. When pressed on his motives, he simply stated, "They were imperfect. They pretended at flawlessness, but I saw the truth. Catherine's imperfections were evident to me. Her perfection was a facade." The search for the other victims mentioned in Lyndon's note led investigators to remote locations where 2 more suitcases were recovered, each containing a woman carefully curated by the killer. Lyndon's trial was a somber affair, with the families of the victims seeking closure in the face of unimaginable loss. For Detective Mercer, the case was officially closed, but the shadows of unanswered questions lingered. What drove Lyndon to fixate on these particular women? What inner demons led him down such a dark path of obsession and violence? As the river continued its unhurried journey downstream, washing away all traces of the grim discovery, Mercer sat at her desk in the precinct. The chilling notebooks from the killer's shrine served as a haunting reminder that in the most ordinary of lives, darkness could lie hidden beneath a veneer of normalcy. The most perilous predators, she knew, were often the ones hiding in plain sight, waiting patiently to pounce at the first sign of imperfection. Story 18. In the heart of the city, the old library stood silent, its fate sealed by the impending wrecking ball. The workers toiled tirelessly, their hammers ringing out the final chapter of this architectural tale. But destiny had other plans, hidden within the dusty pages of time. As the workers dismantled the bookshelves, one stumbled upon a peculiar latch, concealed from sight for generations. With a gentle click, the bookshelf swung open, revealing a secret passageway shrouded in darkness. The air whispered of secrets long forgotten, of whispers lost in the shadows. Within the hidden chamber, time stood still. No furniture adorned the space, save for a solitary chair anchored to the floor, a silent sentinel in the midst of the unknown. Etched upon the walls, a haunting message repeated itself endlessly, "I am still here." The call went out, echoing through the corridors of law enforcement. The construction foreman's voice crackled over the radio, summoning the authorities to the scene. What began as a routine demolition now danced on the edge of a mystery, a puzzle waiting to be solved. Detective Morgan Walsh stepped into the hidden room, his flashlight casting long shadows that danced with the cryptic message on the walls. His seasoned eyes took in the scene, a tapestry woven with threads of intrigue and darkness. "Secure the perimeter," Walsh commanded, his voice a solemn echo in the confined space. "Let no one disturb the truth that lurks within." The history of the library whispered tales of the Harrington family, their legacy tainted by the enigma of a vanished daughter. Rebecca's disappearance had cast a long shadow over the family, leaving behind unanswered questions and shattered hopes. The air hummed with the weight of the past, with the whispers of a story unfinished. Forensic technicians unraveled the mysteries hidden within the chamber. Hair and fibers clung to the weathered chair, a silent testimony to the struggle that had once unfolded in the shadows. Blood and skin cells mingled with the dust, painting a portrait of a life interrupted, of a soul lost to the darkness. Walsh delved into the labyrinth of the Harrington family's past, his mind a tapestry of questions and suspicions. The timing of the library's donation gnawed at him, a breadcrumb leading to a truth obscured by layers of deceit. Each revelation unearthed a new layer of darkness, a truth waiting to be brought into the light. The fingerprints of the past painted a chilling portrait. Maxwell Harrington, the family patriarch, held the key to the hidden room's secrets. Financial records whispered of transactions shrouded in shadow, of payments made in silence and deceit. The pieces of the puzzle clicked into place, revealing a truth darker than the night itself. As the investigation unfolded, the shadows of the past gave way to a chilling revelation. Rebecca had not run away, as the world had believed. She had been held captive, imprisoned behind the walls of her family's legacy. The blood ties that bound her had become chains of torment, shackles that held her captive in a prison of secrets. Maxwell's veneer of innocence crumbled under the weight of evidence, his words a confession of sins long buried in the shadows. The truth spilled forth like blood from a wound, painting a portrait of betrayal and despair. Rebecca's voice, silenced in death, echoed through the chamber, a plea for justice that could no longer be ignored. The excavation unearthed the bones of the past, the remains of a life cut short by greed and madness. Rebecca's silver bracelet glinted in the dim light, a silent witness to the tragedy that had unfolded in the shadows. The echoes of her presence lingered in the air, a reminder of a life lost but never forgotten. As Maxwell faced the consequences of his actions, the community gathered to mourn a life stolen too soon. Flowers bloomed at the entrance of the library, a testament to the enduring power of memory and justice. Rebecca's spirit lingered in the whispers of the wind, a presence that could never be erased from the annals of time. In the end, it was Rebecca who had the final word. Her message, etched in desperation on the walls of the hidden chamber, spoke of a truth that could not be silenced. "I am still here," she whispered, a promise that justice would prevail, that her story would be told, no matter how deep it lay buried in the shadows of the past. Story 19. The tale begins in a quaint costume shop, its windows dimmed by the fading light of day as it prepared to close its doors for the last time. Among the scattered remnants of old inventory, a woman wandered through the aisles, her footsteps muffled by the dust of forgotten costumes. Her fingers brushed against the fabric of time-worn garments until they alighted upon a mask nestled on a forgotten shelf. Its features were delicate, yet held a quality that unsettled the woman, as if the mask bore a lifelike presence that transcended mere decoration. Approaching the counter, the woman placed the mask down, prompting a flicker of hesitation in the cashier's eyes. "That's not ours," he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. Perplexed, the woman sought out a tag, but none could be found. With a nonchalant shrug, she decided to claim the mask as her own and carried it home, unaware of the mysterious forces she had unwittingly invited into her life. As the night draped its shadows over the world, a soft sound stirred the woman from her slumber, a whisper of fabric shifting, barely audible yet undeniably present. Her eyes fluttered open to find the mask perched upon her nightstand, its gaze fixed upon her with an intensity that sent a shiver down her spine. This woman, known as Catherine Reed, would soon become a figure of intrigue and tragedy. It was her neighbor who stumbled upon the chilling scene the next morning, drawn by the sight of Catherine's door left ajar, allowing a sliver of morning light to spill into the darkened interior. A borrowed book forgotten in hand, the neighbor crossed the threshold into a realm of the inexplicable. There, upon the bedroom floor, lay Catherine, her form unnaturally still, the mask nowhere to be found. Detective Morgan arrived at the scene, where the hushed voices of forensic investigators mingled with the rhythmic clicks of their shutters, capturing the haunting tableau before them. "No signs of forced entry," noted one officer, his pen scratching against the notepad in a futile attempt to make sense of the senseless. The detective's gaze swept across the room, absorbing details that whispered of a story untold: a partially open drawer, a lipstick-stained water glass, and the absence of a familiar face that would never again greet the light of day. The medical examiner knelt beside Catherine's lifeless form, his expression grave as he spoke of an enigma that defied initial inspection. "No wounds, no signs of struggle," he murmured, gesturing towards her frozen visage contorted in a silent scream of terror. It was a death inexplicable, a departure from the ordinary into the realm of the unseen. Catherine, known in life for her keen eye as an art appraiser, had now become a subject of scrutiny in death. Her colleagues spoke of her with reverence, citing her ability to discern authenticity with a glance, to unravel the threads of deception woven by the hands of forgers. The detective pondered the irony of a life cut short by a mask that bore the semblance of truth, yet harbored a darker reality within its features. The investigation took a chilling turn as security footage from the costume shop unveiled a perplexing truth. The cashier's confusion mirrored the enigma of the mask itself, prompting a visit from the detective to unravel the tangled web of mysteries that clung to its existence. The shop owner, racked with unease, spoke of the mask's inexplicable appearance during a clearance sale, a harbinger of misfortune that whispered of a past shrouded in shadows. Forensics unearthed a clue that led the investigators down a path fraught with dread microscopic fibers embedded in Catherine's fingertips, remnants of a grasp that had sought to unravel the secrets held within the mask's uncanny facade. The fibers, a blend of human hair and an unidentified organic substance, spoke of a legacy steeped in darkness, a lineage of masks that bore witness to the passage of souls across time. As the detective delved deeper into the annals of forgotten tragedies, a retired investigator emerged from the shadows of the past, bearing a revelation that veered into the realm of the supernatural. Ancient symbols hidden within the masks whispered of a ritual older than memory, a dance of souls entwined with fate, orchestrated by forces beyond mortal ken. A journal discovered in Catherine's apartment unveiled a truth too dreadful to ignore, a truth that spoke of a malevolent entity that traversed the ages in search of vessels to inhabit, masks as its conduits for the transference of life itself. The journal's pages bore witness to Catherine's descent into madness as she unraveled the threads of a conspiracy that spanned generations, each victim a stepping stone in a macabre dance of death. The investigation culminated in a revelation that defied logic, a cause of death attributed not to physical harm, but to a terror so profound it stilled the beating heart within Catherine's breast. The detective grappled with the implications of a horror that lurked beyond the veil of reason, a specter that wore the guise of innocence while harboring a hunger for the essence of life itself. Surveillance footage from a vigilant neighbor unveiled a chilling truth, a figure cloaked in darkness, bearing the mask of Catherine's demise, moving with an uncanny mimicry of her form, yet devoid of the spark of humanity that defined her essence. The mask, a harbinger of doom, had slipped through the cracks of reality, leaving a trail of despair in its wake. Months passed and whispers of a peculiar mask echoed across the country, drawing the investigators towards a vintage shop where the mask had found a new home. But the buyer's identity remained shrouded in mystery, a phantom slipping through their grasp, leaving only questions in its wake. The case, officially unsolved, lingered in the detective's thoughts like a shadow cast by an unseen sun. Catherine's journal, a testament to the unfathomable, found a resting place in the confines of a desk drawer, a reminder of a truth too vast for mortal minds to comprehend. And as the night descended, cloaking the world in shadows, the detective would awaken to a sense of unease, a feeling of eyes watching from the darkness, a premonition of a mask waiting to claim its next victim. For the mask is a relic of a darker age, a vessel of unspeakable power that moves unseen through the tapestry of existence, seeking out those attuned to its malevolent purpose. and when it finds its next host, a soul will awaken to the soft sound of its approach, to the empty gaze of hollow eyes fixed upon a destiny entwined with death. The mask waits, patient and unyielding, a specter of dread that haunts the edges of sleep, a whisper of terror that lingers in the silence of the night. Story 20: The Enigmatic House. The ancient box lay hidden beneath layers of time in the attic, a forgotten treasure trove of memories left behind by the previous inhabitants of the house. Among the faded Polaroids of joyful celebrations and family gatherings, one photograph stood out to Rebecca, the current occupant of the dwelling. In the eerie stillness of the living room captured in the photo, a family sat on the familiar couch, their smiles frozen in time. But these were not familiar faces. Behind them, a shadowy figure loomed in the hallway, a silent observer in the dim light. Rebecca's fingers trembled as she held the photograph, feeling a chill snake its way up her spine. Descending the creaking wooden steps, Rebecca brought the unsettling image to the harsh light of the kitchen. The uncanny resemblance between her home and the scene in the photo sent shivers down her spine. The same archway, the same details etched into the memory of the house, yet inhabited by strangers from the past. Detective Morgan, a seasoned investigator with a weathered leather jacket, delved into the mystery with a keen eye. As he scrutinized the photograph, a sense of foreboding hung in the air. Seeking answers, he inquired about the previous owners, the enigmatic Nelsons, who had left without a trace. The investigation unfolded like a cryptic puzzle, revealing a pattern of families disappearing after a year of residence in the house. Each family, including the elusive Sutherlands, seemed to vanish into thin air, leaving behind no trace of their existence. Forensic analysis unveiled unsettling details about the photograph, pointing to a hidden presence in the hallway, a tall, shadowy figure with an intent gaze. The eerie similarities between the figure and a long-dead architect named Samuel Whitfield only deepened the mystery. Beneath the concrete floor of the basement, a chilling discovery awaited the investigators. The missing families, perfectly preserved in the earth, told a haunting tale of secrets buried deep within the house. Among their possessions lay a camera, capturing moments of unsuspecting families, unaware of the lurking presence. As the investigation unfolded, a hidden crawlspace in the attic revealed a sinister truth, a journal detailing the meticulous observations of the families by an unknown watcher. The final entry hinted at a sinister plan unfolding, sending shivers down Rebecca's spine. Seeking safety in a hotel under police protection, Rebecca's solitude was shattered by a mysterious phone call in the dead of night. The chilling sound of breathing and the mechanical click of a Polaroid camera echoed through the darkness, a reminder of the unseen forces at play. The house, now a sealed crime scene, stood as a silent witness to the mysteries within its walls. The elusive Samuel Whitfield remained a ghostly presence, his true identity shrouded in uncertainty, and in the shadows, new photographs developed, capturing the essence of unsuspecting families watched over by unseen eyes. As the investigation continued, the enigmatic house stood as a testament to the darkness that lurked within its depths. The truth about the man in the photograph remained elusive, a riddle waiting to be solved by those brave enough to seek the secrets hidden within its haunted halls. Story 21. The aged envelope with its yellowed corners and fresh stamp held a secret that had just arrived at the detective's desk. Detective Sarah Morgan gingerly unfolded the contents, revealing a single sheet of paper bearing a message typed in a rushed, uneven font. "I am sorry for what I did." The paper exuded a faint dampness, a metallic scent lingering in the air. A reddish smear along the bottom edge caught her attention, not ink, but something more sinister. Carefully, she sealed the letter in an evidence bag, her gloved hands moving with practiced precision. The forensics team confirmed her suspicions the stain was human blood, matching the DNA from an unsolved murder case that had plagued the department for years. The victim, a young journalist named Rebecca Warren, had been brutally slain in her apartment, her laptop missing, her notes scattered. The motive seemed tied to a story she was investigating. Despite exhaustive efforts, the case had grown cold until this mysterious letter arrived at the homicide division. Little fingerprints were found on the paper and envelope, only smudges hinting at gloved hands. The postmark offered a glimmer of hope after months of dead ends. Gathering her team in the dimly lit briefing room, Morgan pinned the letter to the board adorned with photos and profiles that had led nowhere. "This changes everything," she declared. "Our killer shows remorse." Detective James Chen, her longtime partner, eyed the letter skeptically. "Or perhaps it's a ploy to deceive us," he suggested. The antique typewriter's unique patterns led them on a hunt through dusty shops and collections, hoping to trace the source. As the investigation gained momentum, they delved into Rebecca's life, uncovering her fearless pursuit of truth. Her latest inquiry involved a wealthy family embroiled in a bitter inheritance dispute. Suspicions fell on the deceased patriarch's children, particularly Richard, the eldest son, and Eleanor, the youngest daughter. Rebecca's boyfriend, Michael Barnes, revealed unsettling details about her fears of being followed, shedding new light on the case. A second letter arrived, echoing the first with a chilling revelation. The trail led to the family mansion, where Richard's polished facade began to crack under scrutiny. Eleanor's involvement added a layer of complexity, her custom stationery linking back to the damning evidence. A hidden room in Richard's home unveiled a sinister collection of clues, tying him to Rebecca's demise. The final revelation came when a recording surfaced, capturing Richard and Michael discussing Rebecca's fate. The pieces fell into place, revealing a web of deceit and betrayal. Richard's arrest marked the beginning of the end as the truth emerged in a courtroom drama. Michael's testimony sealed Richard's fate, exposing the depth of their involvement. As Richard faced justice, Detective Morgan approached Rebecca's grieving parents with a solemn nod. Closure, though bittersweet, had finally arrived. The bloodstained letters stood as a haunting reminder that even the most calculated crimes leave traces of guilt. Rebecca Warren's case became a cautionary tale, illustrating that true justice often hinges on the weight of a killer's conscience and the echoes of a typewriter, whispering the truth in the dead of night. Story 22: The Enigmatic Manor. The new homeowners brushed off the crackling of the old intercom system as a quirky relic of the past, a forgotten echo in the night. Nestled among ancient oak trees, the Victorian manor exuded a mysterious charm, with its weathered exterior hiding a modern interior, a blend of history and renovation. Daniel and Meredith Parker, drawn to the property's history, had acquired it at a surprisingly reasonable price, despite the real estate agent's uneasy demeanor during their initial visit. One fateful night, curiosity led the husband to press the intercom button, and a chilling whisper crackled through the speaker. "Why did you come back?" Startled, he recoiled, hands trembling as his wife, standing behind him, denied ever uttering those words. The atmosphere in the house shifted, shadows dancing in the dim light as an unseen presence seemed to stir. Detective Sarah Reeves arrived at the manor in response to a call about a possible break-in, but there was an inexplicable undercurrent to the situation. Daniel, his face drained of color, recounted the unsettling events that had unfolded since the intercom had started acting up. Whispers turned into sentences, and a sense of unease permeated the once serene home. Meredith, her grip tight on an untouched mug, revealed a shocking discovery, a hidden journal unearthed behind a wall during a renovation project. The journal belonged to Alina, the previous owner, detailing her fears of her husband Vincent's intentions to harm her. The final entry, dated 30 years prior, hinted at a sinister conclusion to Alina's story. As Detective Reeves delved into the history of the house, a dark narrative of betrayal and tragedy began to unravel. Vincent and Alina Blackwood, the previous owners, harbored secrets buried deep within the property. Vincent's elaborate deception, orchestrated to conceal his heinous crime, slowly came to light as the investigation progressed. Beneath the garden shed's concrete foundation, forensic analysis revealed the remains of a woman in her 40s, bearing signs of a violent end. The truth, long concealed by layers of deceit, emerged with chilling clarity, implicating Vincent in a crime that spanned decades. His calm confession sent shivers down the detective's spine as he revealed the twisted web of lies he had spun to erase Alina from existence. Vincent's trial concluded swiftly, his guilt undeniable as the evidence painted a damning picture of his calculated actions. The judge's words echoed the gravity of the crime, acknowledging the decades of deception that had shrouded the truth. Daniel and Meredith, unable to bear the weight of the house's dark past, made the decision to part ways with the property, holding a somber memorial for Alina before departing. In the aftermath of the investigation, the house stood silent, its secrets laid bare, but its walls whispering of a past that refused to be forgotten. The intercom system, a conduit for long-suppressed voices, was removed by the new owners during renovations, silencing the echoes of the past that lingered in its wires. Detective Reeves, as she closed the case file for the last time, couldn't shake the feeling that the house itself held a memory of the tragedy that had unfolded within its walls. Known among local law enforcement as the house that answered back, it stood as a reminder of how the echoes of the past can ripple through time, seeking justice and closure. Driving past the manor on her way home, Detective Reeves would slow down, the window cracked open to catch whispers carried on the wind, a haunting reminder of the enigmatic secrets that lay hidden within the walls of the Victorian manor. Story 23. Renovations always reveal forgotten relics of the past, old newspapers, broken trinkets, faded photographs. But when Sarah and Michael began restoring their Victorian-era home, they stumbled upon a hidden message tucked beneath the floorboards. The ancient paper crinkled as they unfolded it, revealing a cryptic warning, "Don't trust the one who knocked." Before they could comprehend its meaning, 3 sharp knocks reverberated through the silent house, sending shivers down their spines. Intrigued and unnerved, the couple called Detective Alina Reed to investigate the mysterious note. With the floorboard still upturned, Alina carefully retrieved the message, her experienced hands handling it delicately. Despite their unintentional contact with the note, Alina sensed a genuine fear in Sarah and Michael's eyes as they recounted the eerie knocking sound that had accompanied the discovery. Delving into the history of the house, Alina uncovered the tale of the previous owners, the Hargrove family. Franklin and Margaret Hargrove had resided there for years until Margaret's death, leaving the once grand home abandoned. Franklin, a respected retired teacher with a penchant for woodworking, had a cloud of suspicion looming over him in his final years, with whispers of paranoia and a mysterious collector who demanded payment. As Alina pieced together the puzzle, she uncovered the dark truth hidden beneath the floorboards. Through forensic analysis and Margaret's poignant diaries, a harrowing story emerged. Franklin's gambling debts had led to a fatal confrontation with Victor Mercer, the ominous collector who met a grim fate at the hands of Franklin's desperation. Margaret, out of fear and love, had helped conceal the truth, living in the shadow of the grim secret until her final days. The house, now tainted by its dark past, stood as a silent witness to the tragedy that unfolded within its walls. Sarah and Michael, unable to bear the weight of the house's history, decided to sell it, leaving it abandoned and echoing with the whispers of the past. Local legends spoke of ghostly knocks that echoed through the empty halls at night, a chilling reminder of the secrets buried within the house's foundation. The note, now preserved in evidence storage, bore a haunting message: "Don't trust the one who knocked." Elinor's final report hinted at the lingering mysteries that still lingered, casting a shadow of doubt over the true nature of the events that had transpired. As the house stood silent and abandoned, the echoes of the past continued to resonate, leaving unanswered questions and unsettling whispers in the air. Some secrets, Elinor mused, are destined to remain shrouded in mystery, their true meaning lost to the passage of time. Story 24. As the town slumbers under a blanket of night, secrets stir in the shadows, whispered only by the wind through the trees. There is a house at the edge of the woods, a house forgotten by time, its mysteries shrouded in darkness. No one acknowledges its existence for fear of what lurks within its weathered walls. The house stands alone, a silent sentinel, with windows like empty eyes and a porch that sags with the weight of untold years. One fateful night, a group of hikers strayed too close to the forbidden dwelling. What they discovered sent shivers down their spines, a list of names carved into the wooden siding, etched deep as ancient runes. Among them, a name unfamiliar to all, fresh and unweathered, as if waiting to be claimed. And claim it, one of the hikers did, with trembling voice and quivering soul. The call came in the dead of night, a whisper of trespass and terror. Mason Wright, the lead hiker, spoke of his name carved into that accursed house. The officers who responded expected mere mischief, the folly of youth, but what they found defied logic and reason. Detective Sarah Keller arrived at the scene as darkness embraced the forest, her flashlight piercing the veil of night to reveal the eerie facade of the house. The names, 27 in all, etched into the wood like a macabre tally of the lost. Some faded with time, others sharp and fresh, as if carved by invisible hands. And at the bottom, Mason Wright, the letters still bearing the scent of fresh-cut wood. "I've never been here," Mason protested, his breath a mist in the chill night air. "I don't understand." Thus began the investigation, a descent into the shadows of the past. Each name on the wall, a haunting echo of a soul lost to the forest. Missing persons, vanished without a trace, their stories woven into the very fabric of the house's dark history. Forensic analysts meticulously documented the carvings, each name a puzzle piece in a sinister game. The oldest, Rebecca Hansen, a ghost from 37 years past, her fate sealed in the depths of the woods, and Mason, an enigma among them, with no thread connecting him to the tangled web of disappearances. The focus shifted to Mason's companions, their photographs revealing a spectral presence lurking in the background, a figure obscured by shadow, a specter from another realm. Emily Chen swore they were alone on the trail, unaware of the silent watcher in their midst. A search of the house uncovered a chilling tableau in the basement, personal effects of the missing hikers meticulously arranged, a grim memorial to lives extinguished. Bloodstains whispered of unspeakable acts, of horrors unseen but deeply felt. As the darkness closed in, Mason's world unraveled. Whispers in the night, footprints in fresh snow, a sense of being hunted. The specter of Victor Blackwood, the reclusive hunter who once called the house home, loomed over them like a malevolent shadow. The manhunt for Blackwood spanned jurisdictions, a race against time and fate. but the hunter remained elusive, a phantom in the night. Mason, consumed by paranoia, vanished without a trace, leaving only a cryptic message on his bedroom wall. The hunt continued, a dance of predator and prey, until a hidden workshop revealed the truth, a name carved in wood, a harbinger of doom. The trap was set, the stage prepared for the final act. And then on a night like any other, the figure emerged from the forest, a specter of dread and longing. The cameras blinked, the traps sprung, but the hunter slipped through their grasp like smoke on the wind. The house stands silent and watchful, its secrets buried deep within its walls. Mason and the technician are lost to the shadows, their fates entwined with the darkness that haunts the forest. The names on the wall are a whispered curse, a warning to all who dare to speak them aloud. And so the town sleeps on, unaware of the darkness that lingers at the edge of the woods, the house that time forgot, and the names that no one speaks. Story 25. In the old apartment, peculiar sounds echoed through the walls, the groaning of pipes, the creaking of floorboards. But the new tenant sensed a different rhythm, a presence beyond the ordinary. The footsteps above were deliberate, steady, moving with purpose, yet she dwelled on the top floor. One evening, a surge of courage led her to tap the ceiling with a broomstick. The sound ceased, a hushed stillness lingered. Then a solitary knock resounded from within the ceiling. Sarah Coleman chose to keep the mysterious knocking to herself, attributing it to the settling of the building or perhaps a small creature exploring the attic space. Despite the nightly footsteps that continued their methodical dance above her, she adapted, drowning them out with heightened TV volume, wearing headphones to bed, anything to veil the rhythmic footfalls tracing unseen paths across her ceiling in the dark. Detective Morris stumbled upon the tail of the apartment when a maintenance worker stumbled upon a concealed crawlspace during routine repairs. Removing a section of drywall to mend a leak outside Sarah's unit, the worker revealed an unexpected passage, absent from the building blueprints. Peering inside with a beam of light, he uncovered a hidden living quarter, a litter of food wrappers, empty water bottles, a soiled blanket, and a weathered notebook. The building superintendent promptly summoned the police. Detective Morris, joined by his partner Detective Rivera, encountered the shaken maintenance worker. "Someone has been dwelling in the walls," he repeated, pallid with fear. "Someone has been watching." Within the notebook were meticulous notes on Sarah Coleman, her routines, her visitors, her meals, her viewing habits, her moments of rest. The script began orderly but unraveled into chaos towards the end, with cryptic symbols adorning the margins. "The subject no longer responds to my signals," the final entry read. "She has chosen to ignore me. No one ignores me." Forensic teams delved into the crawlspace, uncovering fingerprints unknown to any database. A labyrinth of passages weaved through the walls and ceilings, some dating back decades. These tunnels linked to 5 separate units, terminating in observation points disguised as fixtures or minor damages, with Sarah Coleman's being the sole endpoint. Current residents professed ignorance to anything beyond typical apartment noises. Former tenants, however, whispered of feeling watched or hearing inexplicable movements. 3 past tenants of Sarah's abode recounted their unease, one fleeing after a mere fortnight. None had reported their apprehensions, fearing ridicule. The case unfolded with the discovery of microscopic blood spatter in a crawlspace. DNA testing matched it to Martin Weaver, a former resident who had vanished without a trace 4 years prior, residing directly beneath Sarah's unit. As the investigation delved into Martin's disappearance, a troubling pattern emerged surrounding a reclusive tenant named Edward. He had resided in 6 different buildings over 2 decades, always on the top floor, maintaining a solitary existence before vanishing without a trace. Neighbors recalled his intensity and his fixation on silence. Property records led investigators to a remote cabin belonging to Edward. Within its walls lay a chilling collection: photographs of residents, blueprints of building structures, detailed journals chronicling his specimen observations, and 6 missing persons reports, all linked to former residences of Edward. In a macabre revelation, cadaver dogs guided detectives to freshly turned earth behind the cabin, exposing multiple graves. As forensic experts worked to identify the victims, Detective Morris revisited Sarah's building, finding the crawl spaces sealed but still echoing with whispers of the past. During the installation of new security systems, a notebook was discovered in a hidden corner, a newer addition to the collection. Its initial page bore a stark message: "They found my old nest, but not my new one." The scribbles matched the previous notebook, the final page unveiling a crude sketch of Sarah's apartment layout with a crimson path marked for that very night. Officers hurried to evacuate Sarah, only to find her dwelling deserted. Her phone rested on the kitchen counter, the television murmuring, the shower running. In the misty bathroom mirror, a message materialized, etched by a finger: "Look up." The ceiling panel above the shower had been removed. The pursuit of Edward Mercer continues, a skilled construction worker who exploited his knowledge to construct hidden passages and observation points. Thermal scans revealed an absence of current occupancy within the walls, leaving Sarah Coleman's fate shrouded in mystery, linked to disappearances spanning multiple states. Detective Morris grapples with the haunting image of Sarah, ensnared in a world of unseen eyes and lurking footsteps above her. The silence that shattered when she dared to knock, reverberating with a reply. In the quiet of his home, he gazes upward, listening, pondering who else may be listening in return. Story 26. In a quiet suburb, a family's peaceful existence was shattered by a storm that brought them face to face with a chilling discovery. Rebecca Morgan, a mother with a wary heart, found herself reluctantly ascending into the attic of their new rental home. The leak in the roof demanded her attention, leading her to a place she had avoided. The attic was a realm of forgotten treasures, cloaked in layers of dust and webs spun by time. Amidst the shadows, a peculiar sight caught Rebecca's eye: a dollhouse of exquisite detail, a miniature world frozen in eerie perfection. Each tiny piece of furniture within meticulously arranged, as if waiting for its inhabitants to return. But as Rebecca peered closer, a wave of unease washed over her. The figures inside were not mere dolls, they were exquisitely carved replicas of her own family, each one a mirror image of reality, down to the smallest detail. Except for one crucial deviation, the figure meant to represent Rebecca herself was not seated as the others were, but stood near the attic door, silently observing. Intrigued and unsettled, Rebecca traced her finger over the roof of the dollhouse, feeling the spot where the miniature version of herself stood vigil. The inexplicable presence of the dollhouse in their new abode sent a shiver down her spine, a chill that transcended the physical cold seeping through the attic's ancient timbers. This house wasn't their childhood sanctuary. It was a temporary haven, a space borrowed from the past. The revelation of the dollhouse spurred Rebecca to reach out to the authorities, setting in motion a chain of events that would unravel a mystery as dark as the attic's shadows. Law enforcement descended upon the suburban residents, met with a family in distress, their fear palpable as they huddled together in the safety of their living room, refusing to venture back into the attic's realm. Among the investigators was Detective Sarah Harmon, whose initial skepticism melted away as she delved deeper into the intricate web of secrets woven within the dollhouse's walls. It was the precision that struck me. Detective Harmon later reflected, recounting the haunting accuracy of each miniature figure's resemblance to its real-life counterpart. The father's receding hairline, the son's favorite hoodie, the mother's gentle birthmark, all captured in painstaking detail within the confines of the dollhouse. The turning point came with the revelation of fingerprints on the dollhouse that belonged to none of the family members, leading the investigation down a path fraught with chilling discoveries. Microscopic cameras hidden within the eyes of the miniature figures unveiled a voyeuristic obsession that transcended mere surveillance. The Morgans weren't just being watched, their lives were being meticulously catalogued, their every move recorded and recreated in miniature form. It wasn't just stalking, Detective Harmon explained, her voice tinged with a mix of disbelief and dread. It was an obsession of unparalleled intensity, a violation of privacy that bordered on the macabre. The revelation of a hidden entrance in the pantry, leading to a secret living space beneath the house, painted a picture of clandestine occupation that defied logic. An intruder had made the house their own long before the Morgans set foot inside, living in the shadows, a ghostly presence unbeknownst to its unwitting inhabitants. The absence of forced entry confounded investigators, as did the revelation that the house had stood vacant for months before the Morgans' arrival, a silent witness to unspeakable deeds. The trail of clues led to a small apartment across town, a place suffused with the echoes of obsession and possession. Martin Wells, son of the house's previous owners, emerged as the orchestrator of the chilling charade, his mind a labyrinth of twisted motives and dark desires. Financial woes had driven him to create a realm of surveillance and control, a twisted reflection of his childhood home that he refused to relinquish. The dollhouse was his kingdom, each miniature figure a pawn in his elaborate game of dominance and submission. As the layers of deception peeled away, a portrait of psychological unraveling emerged, a man consumed by a need for power, a hunger for control that knew no bounds. Wells's calm demeanor during interrogation belied the storm raging within, his words a chilling testimony to the depths of his delusion. "They were living in my world, in my memories," he whispered, his eyes devoid of remorse. "I had to ensure they played their roles to perfection." The psychological evaluation painted a portrait of possessive madness, a fractured mind seeking solace in the semblance of authority. Wells's world revolved around the dollhouses, each a shrine to his fractured psyche, a testament to the lengths he would go to preserve the illusion of control. For the Morgans, the nightmare was far from over. The violation they endured left scars that ran deeper than physical wounds, a sense of unease that lingered long after Wells was brought to justice. The courtroom became a stage for their trauma, a space where their voices echoed with a mix of relief and lingering dread. Wells's sentence was a semblance of justice, a reckoning for the havoc he had wrought upon their lives. But the true horror lay in the realization that he might have continued undetected, his web of deceit expanding with each passing day. The dollhouse, once a symbol of terror, became a relic of a past they sought to bury, a reminder of a darkness that lurked just beneath the surface of the everyday. As the Morgans sought solace in a new beginning, Rebecca's words echoed with a haunting truth. "We were never truly alone," she whispered, her eyes haunted by memories that refused to fade. "Somewhere out there, a shadow of us lingers in a world of twisted mirrors, a world where we are but pawns in a game we never knew we played." The dollhouse was gone, its miniature inhabitants scattered to the winds of time, but the specter of surveillance lingered, a ghostly reminder that some nightmares never truly end. And in the silence of the night, as the world slumbered, a whisper of fear danced on the edge of dreams, a reminder that even in the safety of sleep, the shadows held secrets best left undisturbed. Story 27. In the beginning, there was a flicker, a mere glitch, dancing across the baby monitor's screen. The mother, lulled by the soft hum of nighttime, brushed it off as mere interference. But then the silence crackled, and a voice, barely a whisper, slipped through the static, urging SHHH, go back to sleep. A chill crept down her spine, freezing her in place. Panic seized her heart as she dashed to her son's room, each thud of her heart echoing in the empty halls. The crib stood vacant, untouched. The window remained shut, the door securely locked. Yet there on the floor lay a stuffed rabbit, its unblinking eyes fixed on her, silently observing. Rebecca's screams pierced the stillness of the night, echoing until her voice was but a raw whisper. The neighbors, roused by her distress, summoned help. Emergency services arrived to find her cradling the rabbit, lost in a world of fear and confusion on the nursery floor. Samuel, her 4-month-old son, had vanished into thin air. The investigation began, shrouded in mystery. No signs of forced entry tainted the home's sanctuary. The security system stood vigilant, undisturbed. The baby monitor footage held the key, capturing only that haunting voice and the crackling static that followed. How could an intruder slip in and steal away a child without a trace, leaving behind only a haunting stuffed rabbit? Suspicions swirled around Rebecca, her strained marriage to Daniel casting shadows on her grief. Medical records whispered of postpartum struggles. The detective's eyes lingered on her composed facade, a mask too perfect for a mother in despair. Whispers danced through the community, painting her as the villain in her own tragedy. Then a glimmer of hope emerged, a thread of evidence leading beyond their grasp. Microscopic fibers clung to the nursery windowsill, foreign to their world. A climbing rope, rare and specialized, hinted at an intruder's skilled hand creeping in from the shadows outside. The focus shifted, unveiling a dark figure prowling in the night, captured in the neighboring security footage. A solitary footprint in the garden soil, marked by a distinctive boot, whispered of a connection to military precision. Daniel returned, a shattered puzzle piece in the mystery. His hands bore the tale of a newfound hobby in rock climbing, a guise to mask his hidden truths. Financial shadows loomed, revealing a life insurance policy taken out on Samuel, a web of deceit woven in silence. The unknown calls, the hidden family, all pointed to a man with secrets buried deep. As the pieces fell into place, the baby monitor emerged as the silent witness to the truth. Hacked and manipulated, its signal twisted by unseen hands. The voice not from within the nursery, but a phantom from afar, haunting Rebecca's restless nights. The digital trail led to a basement where Samuel was found, cradled by a woman named Elaine. Her eyes vacant, she surrendered to the truth, a past tangled in loss and longing. A story unfolded through DNA and whispers of the past, linking Elaine to Daniel in a twisted dance of deceit. The trial echoed with the hush of revelation as the baby monitor's voice resonated through the courtroom. Daniel's cough, a damning echo in the shadows, placed him at the heart of the abduction he disavowed. The jury's swift judgment sealed their fate: kidnappers, conspirators, betrayers of innocence. Rebecca and Samuel sought solace in a new horizon, far from the echoes of that fateful night. The case, a cautionary tale etched in modern shadows, reshaped how we guard our most precious. Baby monitors stood sentinel, guardians against unseen threats. The rabbit, a silent witness to the truth, locked away in Rebecca's closet, a reminder of a night veiled in whispers and shadows. The monitor spoke, not in lies, but in truths unseen, unraveling a tale of darkness and light.